प्रणाम प्रणाम सुदीप भाई। और सब ठीक है?
बड़े टायर्ड लग रहे हैं सर, काफी
थके हुए लग रहे, थोड़ा फ्रेश हो गया था।
अच्छा अच्छा।
की बातें नहीं है। 3 बजे 2:30 बजे 4 बजे। तो आज का क्या ड्रिल है सुदीप?
सर आज का अभी हम अपना एक फाउंडेशन ICCID का जो एक वीडियो है 120 डेज वाला, तो वो शुरू करेंगे सर 5 minutes to 4 एंड फिर उसके बाद हम 5 minutes पास होके 10 मिनट का है सर, तो 5 minutes पास होके उनका स्वामी जी का 15 मिनट का मैसेज है जो हम देशानंद जी का वो चलाएंगे, और इन द मीन टाइम महर्षि आयुर्वेदा के चेयरमैन आनंद जी ज्वाइन कर लेंगे, के सुरेश और आप तीनों से वो जैसे 15 मिनट का खत्म होगा तो फिर उसके बाद एक वार्तालाप रखेंगे सर ऑन स्पिरिचुअलिटी एंड उसको आपको बोलेंगे। फिर उसके बाद फिर उसके बाद 4:30 का दूसरा सेशन है, फिर 5:15 का तीसरा सेशन है, 5:45 का चौथा सेशन है, तो वो तीसरा सेशन है, एंड 6:15 पे हमारा मास का सेशन है। तो मिस्टर मेहरोत्रा से भी कोऑर्डिनेट हो गया है, और मैंने सर उनको मैसेज किया था व्हाट्सएप पे, उनका जवाब नहीं आया। मैंने लिखा था कि मैं कॉल कर सकता हूँ क्या, तो उनका जवाब नहीं आया, बट बाकी और सबसे हो गया। डॉक्टर श्रीनाथ रेड्डी का भी आ गया।
Myself, Dr. Pradeep Srivastav. I am a public health expert. I
से भी कर सकता है।
Wherein what I have learned in this sector is something which I am trying to come out with and give back through a lot of knowledge-based seminars, webinars, discussions, and creating a lot of forums where people can learn, people can actually adapt related to healthcare issues, the current issues and overall healthcare issues, and benefit out of it. So in this lieu, we created a series of programs under the banner of Peel Foundation COVID Fighters. And that series of programs started with a few webinars on the COVID home management, the COVID comorbidity and medical issues related to COVID-19 coronavirus. Nobody needs an introduction of coronavirus and COVID-19, what it is, because I think that's at the top of the mind and top of Google and top of Facebook and everywhere at the top currently.
बात के लिए मैं आप लोगों को धन्यवाद देता हूँ टील फाउंडेशन की टीम में the speakers that you brought are वो तारे आसमान से जमीन पे ले आए आप सारे सितारे थे excellent panel of speakers excellent best you can think of My concluding message would be number one, that the entire world is your family. Asman says, our ancient scriptures have said, why? Because this virus does not discriminate between any color, caste, creed, country, age or gender. हम सब एक लोग हैं, एक कुटुंब है हमारा. So we have to face this pandemic with a human face, expressing sympathy, empathy and compassion.
संकट काल में पेंडेमिक के इस काल में कि जब पूरी धरती पर है असुरक्षा और एक प्रकार का अवसाद है, ऐसे काल में आपने एक संवाद का अवसर दिया है. हमारे शास्त्र कहते हैं कि वादे वादे जायते तत्व बोध, जब कभी व्यथा हो, अवसाद हो, चिंता हो, अल्पता और विशेषकर कोई रोग हो या मानसिक क्लेश हो या किसी भी प्रकार के मनुष्य के सामने चुनौती हो, तब वो संवाद करें.
So they work for about 14 days over there. Then they are rotated. Then another team comes for 14 days. The first team goes into quarantine for 14 days so that they recover and they are pretty okay. They take the sampling, everybody's okay. And then they come back after 14 days. So the rotation continues in every district, in every isolation hospital, in every quarantine facility. So there's no direct load continuously on everybody. And once, if they do, I mean, there are cases they've got infected, like in King George Medical University. There was a doctor who got infected. There was a nurse who got infected there. Now the place where she stays in Lucknow, that entire area of 2 kilometers had to be contained and sanitized and sampled and everything.
Sometimes it can be a relief also that you don't have to get up and wear your best clothes and be out and about. That can also be relaxing for the first couple of days where you can just be. But after some time, I do feel when such an extended lockdown happens, in order for you to feel a little boost to your own self-esteem, for you to do something in the day, there's nothing wrong in wearing clothes that you would go out in, putting on a little makeup, doing your hair.
क्या होता है? लंच मिलता कीजिएगा. हाँ,
Green Foundation has been doing considerable work. It's about 10 years old now, and we have been organizing a lot of health writers workshops, and the main focus is on training health writers to report accurately on health issues and current health issues, and not be carried away by sensationalizing as many of previous do, especially after writers onset accurately health issues and current health issues, and not be carried away by
Namaskar, good afternoon, and welcome to this second edition of India Healthcare E-Summit. And it's one of another feather in our cap in the series of COVID Fighters Safety Movement, which we have been running for almost more than 120 days now. since COVID coronavirus touched our country, India. So, in this e-healthcare summit, first of all, let me welcome our main patron, Dr. Chandrakanta Pandav, the chairman of ICCIDD and one of the leading global public health expert. One of our panelists today, Shri Anand Srivastava, chairman of Mirchi Ayurveda. Namaskar, sir. बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका. Then one of our permanent patron and motivator, this Professor KG Suresh ji. KG Suresh ji doesn't need much introduction. And so the other jury members, we have our my elder brother, Mr. Sanjay Upadhyay. He is one of the leading environmental legal expert, founder of ELDF, and also the founder and editor of Paryavadi, a very popular environmental magazine now. We have my co-host, and the president of Wheel Foundation, Mr. R. Shankar. He is in fact the main host of this program, and we start this program with a very strong message, because the session is on spirituality, the role of spirituality in managing COVID-like pandemic, and it is कि अध्यात्म क्या रोल प्ले करता है. We have with us आनंद श्रीवास्तव जी, जो आयुर्वेदा के बहुत बड़े अपने आप में हस्ती हैं. महर्षि आयुर्वेदा जैसे ओरिजिनल आयुर्वेदिक कंपनी और के ओनर हैं. And we have with us Professor KG Suresh ji, who will be asking him critical questions. But before that, we'll start the program with this very strong message and a long message given by Swami Avdeshanand ji Maharaj, Juna Akhada Pithadishwar. He got stuck in Ayodhya, so he personally could not appear, though he had confirmed about a week back only. But he has given a very strong message. We'll run it for about 12-15 minutes, and then we'll start with a short session of Professor Suresh with Anand Srivastava. Thank you. Can we start the video, please?
फाउंडेशन के आदरणीय स्वदीप श्रीवास्तव जी, इस अवसर पर आदरणीय जय प्रताप सिंह जी, आदरणीय डॉक्टर केशव सिंगल जी, और इस अवसर पर इस समूचे कार्यक्रम की नामकीय सत्ता आदरणीय राकेश शुक्ला जी, और इस वेबिनार में जुड़े हुए आप सब बंधु भगिनियों, विशेषकर चिकित्सक, और इस सूचना के तकनीक और संचार की क्रांति के युग में इस वेबिनार उद्यम में जो ये ई हेल्थ समिट आपने आयोजित की है, इस आयोजन के सभी बंधु भगिनियों और इसके माध्यम से जुड़े हुए आप सभी श्रोता बंधु भगिनियों, एक पहला प्रयोग है ये, जो बड़ा अद्भुत प्रयोग लग रहा है. इस वैश्विक संकट काल में, पेंडेमिक के इस काल में कि जब पूरी धरती पर भय, असुरक्षा और एक प्रकार का अवसाद है, ऐसे काल में आपने एक संवाद का अवसर दिया है. हमारे शास्त्र कहते हैं कि वादे वादे जायते तत्वबोध, जब कभी व्यथा हो, अवसाद हो, चिंता हो, अल्पता और विशेषकर कोई रोग हो या मानसिक क्लेश हो या किसी भी प्रकार की मनुष्य के सामने चुनौती हो, तो वो संवाद करें, और संवाद में उसे निदान मिलेगा, निराकरण के अनेक अवसर उसे प्राप्त होंगे, समाधान मिलेगा, और अनेकों प्रश्नों के उत्तर भी संवाद से प्राप्त. हमारी पूरी संस्कृति संवाद पर आधारित संस्कृति है. वैश्व और पार्वती के संवाद हों, काग के संवाद, शुक संकातिक आदियों ऋषियों के संवाद हों, या शुक और परीक्षित के संवाद हों, अथवा बहुत पूर्व काल में संवाद मिलते हैं भगवान नारायण और चतुरानन ब्रह्मा के. एक बार चतुरानन ब्रह्मा किंकर्त विमूढ़ होकर ऐसा अनुभव करते हैं कि वे एक अभाव अनुभव कर रहे हैं, उनके पास आनंद, सहजता, सरसता अब नहीं रह गई है, और एक अलग प्रकार का भ्रम उनके सामने है. ऐसे काल में उन्होंने नारायण से संवाद, और उसे चतुश्लोकी भागवत कहते हैं. उस संवाद में उन्हें हल मिला. ये एक ऐसा काल है कि जब पूरी सृष्टि कोरोना वायरस के कारण प्रभावित, कोविड-19 एक बड़ी महामारी लेकर आया है। ये जो विषाणु अथवा वायरस है, इसने मानवीय जाति के सामने बड़ा संकट पैदा किया और इस संकट के कारण हम सब देख रहे हैं कि व्यक्ति अपने सरोकार और अपनी जीवन शैली से बिल्कुल पृथक होकर कहीं एकांत में बैठ गया है। मैं कोई बात आगे बढ़ाऊं इससे पहले ये कहना चाहूंगा कि ये इस प्रकार की विभीषिका या महामारी पहली बार धरती पर नहीं है। इससे पूर्व में भी बहुत बड़े उपद्रव अथवा अनेक उत्पात होते रहे, तो आकाश के माध्यम से हुए, वह समुद्र के बड़े तूफानों के द्वारा हुए या नाना प्रकार की महामारियों के माध्यम से हुए। मनुष्य के भीतर एक गवेषणा अथवा अन्वेषण की शक्ति अथवा उसके भीतर में जो एक सामर्थ्य है शोध की और खोज की, उसने उसे बड़ा बल दिया। मनुष्य के पास जो जीवटता है, जिजीविषा है और उसमें भी जीवन को रखने की जो उसकी एक उद्दाम भावना है, उसके कारण उसने औषधियां खोजी, उसने अन्न ढूंढ लिया और अपने जीवन के लिए न जाने कितनी सुख सुविधाएं उसने इकट्ठी कर। मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा कि इस महामारी से लड़ने का एकमात्र कोई उपाय है तो वो है हमारा आत्मविश्वास, वह हमारी आत्म ऊर्जा अथवा हमारा स्वयं का एक बल। तो कहीं अगर हम अपने आत्मविश्वास को, अपनी अंतर ऊर्जा को और अपने तेज को जो भीतर समाहित है, अगर हम उसे कहीं विकसित कर सके तो ये इस चुनौती को हम या इस समस्या को हम जीत सकते हैं अथवा इसका निराकरण हमारे हाथ तक सकता है। मनुष्य के भीतर अतुल्य तेज, अपूर्व सामर्थ्य, उसके भीतर शुद्धता, पवित्रता तो समाहित है ही, पर वो अनंत, मनुष्य के भीतर एक अनंतता समाहित है और वह अजेय है। और मनुष्य होने का भी अर्थ यही है कि वो अपनी अनंतता और अजेयता को अर्जित करे। तो ये एक अवसर भी हाथ लगा है कि जब मनुष्य अपने भीतर के सत्य को उद्घाटित कर सकता है, वह अपने होने के अर्थ को उजागर कर सकता है या अपनी वास्तविकताओं से परिचय प्राप्त कर सकता है। तो जहां हम ऐसा अनुभव कर रहे हैं कि वो दिन आई है और उस बड़े ये महामारी कारण एक बड़ा रोग आया है, वहाँ ये अवसर भी तो है हम अपने धैर्य को, सहनशीलता, अपनी सामर्थ्य, संयम और आत्मविश्वास हम जगा सकते। पूरी धरती पर भारत का एक अद्भुत नेतृत्व उभर कर सामने आया है और वे औषधियों के कारण तो आए हैं। संसार भर के अनेक राजनेता भारत से मेडिसिन मांग रहे हैं, केवल औषधि बल्कि विचार और जीवन शैली। आप सब जानते ही हैं पिछले कुछ वर्षों में भारत ने एक अलग तरह की भूमिका पूरे विश्व में अपनी दिखाई है और वो मैं ये बड़े विश्वास के साथ कहना चाहूंगा कि उसकी भूमिका नेतृत्व की भूमिका है, जिसमें पूरा संसार आज योग के वशीभूत होकर और योग कर रहा है। अकेले न्यूयॉर्क जैसे स्टेज में 72,000 योग के केंद्र है। ये जो एक प्रकार की गणना है ये 2008 और 9 की, लेकिन अब तो ये 2020 है, तो लगभग 2 और 3 गुना हो गए। तो लाखों सेंटर्स अकेले एक न्यूयॉर्क स्टेट की में है और फिर पूरे संसार भर में कितने उनकी गणना की जाए तो बहुत अलग बात। अगर मैं पुर्तगाल में गया था 2011 में किसी एक योग सम्मेलन, तब वहां मैंने लगभग 30-35 देशों के प्रतिनिधियों को देखा और उन्होंने अपनी बात रखी कि हमारे देश में अलग अलग प्रकार के योग सेंटर चल रहे हैं। तो भारत का योग पूरे विश्व को अमान्य है। अब पूरे संसार भर में कोई पहली आवश्यकता, कोई पहली एक प्रकार की कोई चर्या, भोर से लेकर रात्रि तक किसी एक हम अधीन है किसी के, तो वो योग है। और आज लोग दवाइयां ढूंढ रहे हैं पर योग के आश्रित हो गए। न केवल योग, आयुर्वेद, न केवल योग और आयुर्वेद बल्कि भारत की आहार पद्धति भी, भारत की जीवन पद्धति भी जिस तरह के इटली में, स्पेन में, जिस तरह के चाइना में और अमेरिका में, ब्रिटेन में जिस तरीके के केस हुए हैं, इस महामारी का जो एक विकराल रूप या वे जिस तरह से भयाक्रांत है, उस तरीके से हम भारतीय भयाक्रांत नहीं है। और इसका मूल है हम शाकाहारी। इसका मूल है कि हमने बहुत पहले ही इसकी व्यवस्थाओं को समझ लिया। आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के एक आह्वान पर पूरा देश खड़ा हो गया। पूरा देश जगमगा रहा था, तब भारत जगमगा रहा था। हमने एक दिन रात्रि के 9 बजे पूरी धरती पर आलोक बिखेर दिया, उजास बिखेर दिया। आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के आह्वान पर पूरा देश खड़ा हो गया। तो एक आध्यात्मिक प्रकृति के हम प्राणी हैं और हमने एक नव दीपावली का सृजन कर दिया। लॉकडाउन को हमने जैसे अनुष्ठान जैसा मान लिया। लॉकडाउन जैसे हमारे लिए कोई व्रत है, लॉकडाउन जैसे माने हमारे लिए कोई एक सिद्धांत है जिसका हमें अनुसरण करना। उसमें हम भयभीत नहीं है, चिंतित नहीं है, व्यथित नहीं है, उसमें हम अपने को ऐसा अनुभव नहीं कर रहे हैं कि हमारा सब कुछ छिप गया। जिस ढंग का भय, आशंकाएं, दुविधाएं, दैन्य, जिस तरह का पलायन, अवसाद, जिस प्रकार की बहुत सी चिंताएं बाहर के देशों में, वो हमारे यहाँ नहीं है। मैं एक और बात कहना चाहूंगा कि वो चिंता आजीविका के लिए भी हमारे यहाँ बहुत नहीं दिखाई। सामान्य एक मजदूर और सामान्य जो सर्वहारा जिसे, तो सर्वहारा में सारे वो प्राणी आते हैं जिनके बड़े कार्य नहीं है, पर वो आजीविका के लिए उतने चिंतित नहीं है, वो इतने व्यग्र नहीं दिखाई दे रहे हैं। इसका कारण क्या है कि हम बहुत आध्यात्मिक, हम आत्मसंतुष्ट हैं। हम एक वैसे प्राणी हैं जो हम बड़े संयम और सहनशीलता के साथ, धैर्य के साथ जीवन जी सकते हैं। तो इस महामारी में अगर कोई बहुत बड़ी हमारी ताकत है, कोई बहुत बड़ा हमारे पास बल और संबल है, तो वो हमारा अध्यात्म ही है। वे हमारी वो जीवन शैली जो बहुत हमें प्रकृति और निसर्ग के साथ जोड़ती है। भोर से लेकर रात्रि पर्यंत तक हमारे बहुत सी चीजें निसर्ग के साथ है, प्रकृति के साथ है। हमारा भोर का स्नान, हमारे संकल्प, हमारी अर्चना, स्तवन, पूजाएं, हमारे सूर्य को अर्घ देना, अथवा हमारी वनस्पतियों के साथ हमारी संयुक्तता, जिसमें तुलसी, नीम, बबूल, हल्दी, इसके अतिरिक्त वेया, धतूर, शमी, बिल्वपत्र आदि कुछ हमारी पूजा के उपचार, कुछ आहार औषधियां हमारी इस ढंग की जिनमें स्वाभाविक रूप से रोग प्रतिरोधात्मक शक्ति समाहित है। तो मैं इस अवसर पर एक बात ये जरूर कहना चाहूंगा कि हम भोर में जगना सीखें। जो लोग ब्रह्म मुहूर्त में शैया त्याग कर देते हैं और अर्ली टू बेड अर्ली टू राइज, जो ये बात कही गई कि अर्ली बहुत प्रातः काल हम सूर्योदय से पहले उठें, ब्रह्म मुहूर्त में हम शैया का त्याग करते हैं और रात्रि में हम जल्दी विश्राम करें। तो इस प्रकार का एक नियम हम इन दोनों बना लें कि हम जल्दी सोएं। कुछ चीजें तो ऐसी हैं ही जो हम कर सकते हैं, जैसे योग है, प्राणायाम है, हम शास्त्रों का भी अध्ययन कर लें। तो विचार एक जितना बड़ा बनेगा हमारा, उतनी बड़ी हमारी सामर्थ्य बनेगी। कभी कभी विचार हमारी सामर्थ्य को जीवित कर देता है। और हम तो भाग्यशाली हैं भारत के प्राणी, हमारे पास में दैवीय विचार है, ईश्वरीय विचार है। हम स्वभावतः परमार्थी, तो अपने भीतर के परमार्थ को, परोपकार को जगाएं। और ये हमने देखा भी है, इस ढंग से कोरोना योद्धा लगे हैं, चिकित्सक, शिक्षक लगे हैं, और स्वच्छता के लिए जो हमारे स्वच्छता बंधु भगिनियां, जो स्वच्छता के कर्मचारी हैं, उन्हें प्रणाम करना चाहिए और मैं उनको वंदन करना चाहिए।
स्वामी जी का आशीर्वाद हमेशा हम लोग के साथ रहा है और इतने अच्छे विचार उन्होंने प्रस्तुत किए। तो अब मैं चाहूँगा केजी सुरेश साहब से कि अब वो फॉर्मली हमारा जो 4th संवाद का एपिसोड है, हील बाय संवाद का एपिसोड, श्री आनंद श्रीवास्तव जी के साथ शुरू करें। हमारे और भी बहुत सारे स्पीकर जो अगले सेशन के हैं, डॉक्टर मनोज अग्रवाल, डॉक्टर धर, नैन्सी फ्रॉम स्टैट फर्स्ट इंडिया, एवरीबॉडी वेलकम to this. We'll start the next session by 4:30, 4:35. Suresh sir, please let us start with Anand ji.
जी, धन्यवाद सुदीप जी. Compliments for organizing another wonderful session, which is so relevant. I hope I am audible.
Yes.
Yeah. Great to see all my friends here, and Dr. Pandav, Shankar ji, Sanjay ji, Anand Srivastav ji, Dhananjay ji. I see so many of my friends. I can go on. I mean, and always, taking very positive initiatives, Mr. Swadeep Srivastav. My congratulations, kudos. And now, let me begin this session, Anand ji. This is on spirituality. Of course, I would have loved to quiz you more on Ayurved. आयुर्वेद पे ज्यादा मैं आपसे सवाल करना मुझे ज्यादा अच्छा लगता, लेकिन आज का विषय अध्यात्म है। तो मैं आपसे सबसे पहले तो ये जानना चाहूंगा कि आज आप देख रहे हैं बहुत सारी आत्महत्याएं हो रही है। पत्रकारों के बरादरी में भी आपने देखा, तरुण सिसोदिया का मामला हुआ, अभी एक और बिटिया ने जो है टेलीविजन एंकर है, उन्होंने आत्महत्या की। एक बहुत सारी इस तरह की घटनाएं हो रही है, यानी कि तनाव बहुत है इस वक्त। और इसमें कई लोग मेडिटेशन टेक्निक्स को अपना रहे हैं, कई स्पिरिचुअल गुरु से बातचीत चैनलों में दिखाए जा रहे हैं। आप इसको समझते हैं कि हम होमियो में एक टर्म यूज करते हैं प्लेसेबो इफेक्ट, ये मात्र प्लेसेबो इफेक्ट है, या आप समझते हैं कि आध्यात्म वाकई जो है ऐसे एक संकट की स्थिति में एक तारणहार के रूप में आ सकता है? आपका इस पर क्या सोच है?
सर आपको म्यूट करने हटाना पड़ेगा। आनंद सर आपको म्यूट हटाना पड़ेगा।
हाँ जी, हाँ। धन्यवाद सुरेश जी। वैसे जैसा आपने कहा आयुर्वेद में आप ज्यादा पूछना चाहते थे, लेकिन आज का विषय स्पिरिचुअलिटी है, तो हम तो यही कहेंगे कि आयुर्वेद का आधार ही अध्यात्म है। अध्यात्म पर ही आधारित होकर के आयुर्वेद आगे बढ़ा है। और यहाँ अध्यात्म क्या है ये भी हम थोड़ा सा देख लेते हैं कि अध्यात्म क्या है। Seeing the truth, practicing the truth and being the truth। हाँ, जो हमारे यहाँ एक धारणा है ना, अहम ब्रह्मास्मि, ये आध्यात्म का सर्वोत्कृष्ट स्तर है। अहम ब्रह्मास्मि तत्वमसि सर्वम खल्विदम ब्रह्म, ये स्तर है। और यही हम तो यही कहेंगे कि आयुर्वेद का भी यही आधार है। और इस तरह से आयुर्वेद और आध्यात्म में ज्यादा कोई अंतर नहीं है। जहां तक आपने आज की दशा का वर्णन किया कि जो आत्महत्या और ये सब जो चीजें होती हैं, हो रही हैं समाज में और ये समय बढ़ रही हैं, इसके पीछे आपने स्वयं ही कहा जो कारण है वो स्ट्रेस है। तनाव जो है वही मुख्य कारण है, उसके पीछे उसके अलावा और कोई कारण हो ही नहीं सकता। और तनाव को दूर करने के लिए अध्यात्म से अच्छी कोई चीज नहीं हो सकती। अब यहाँ यही कहेंगे कि अध्यात्म में क्या होता है। अध्यात्म के जो प्रैक्टिसेस हैं, जैसे ध्यान है, आसन, प्राणायाम, ये सब जो हैं योग की प्रैक्टिसेस हैं ये। और योग से ही अध्यात्म का जो सर्वोच्च स्तर है समाधि का, वो प्राप्त किया जा सकता है। तो ये जो प्रैक्टिसेस हैं ये अपने आप मन और शरीर में बैलेंस की स्थापना करती हैं, समन्वय लाती हैं। और अपने आप लोग सच को देखने लगते हैं और सच का ही अभ्यास करते हैं, प्रैक्टिस करते हैं और सच को पाते हैं, सच का स्वरूप पा लेते हैं। तो ये जो चीजें हैं, आपने प्लेसिबो इफेक्ट का जो इस्तेमाल किया, जो वर्ड प्लेसिबो है ये कोई छोटा मोटा शब्द नहीं है। ये वास्तव में प्लेसिबो का बहुत बड़ा महत्व होता है, जिसको साइंस ने उस समय नहीं माना था जब साइंस के पास भौतिकता के अलावा और कोई सोच थी ही नहीं। प्लेसिबो क्या है? मानसिक अवस्था है। कोई आदमी ने दवाई ली और वो ठीक होने लगा। तो मन में एक भाव आया कि हम कोई काम कर रहे हैं और इसमें हम ठीक हो रहे हैं। तो वो जो ठीक होने लगने वाला भाव है, ये अपने आप में बहुत बड़ा महत्व रखता है। और ये जो भाव है, ये विज्ञान के लोग, जो आधुनिक विज्ञान है, इसके लोग प्लेसिबो इफेक्ट कहते हैं। वरना डॉक्टर या पहले जमाने में तो वैद्य थे, वो केवल नाड़ी देख लेते थे और वो हाँ हाँ ठीक है, तुम ठीक हो जाओगे, इतना सुनना ही होता था और लोग ठीक होने लगते थे। ये प्लेसिबो इफेक्ट नहीं है क्या? तो प्लेसिबो इफेक्ट अपने आप में बहुत बड़ा महत्व रखता है। और ध्यान और जो और दूसरी आध्यात्मिक प्रैक्टिसेस हैं, आसन, प्राणायाम, फिर प्रत्याहार, धारणा, ध्यान, धारणा, समाधि, ये सब जो हैं ये सब भीतर से मन को ही स्ट्रांग बनाती है। जहां मन स्ट्रांग हुआ, अपने आप उसका असर शरीर में पड़ता है। तो मन और शरीर का जो संबंध है वो बहुत बड़ा होता है, बहुत स्ट्रांग होता है। इस वजह से अपने आप लोगों में समन्वय प्रारंभ हो जाता है। तो हम तो ये कहेंगे कि प्लेसिबो इफेक्ट जो आज जिसके जो धारणा या लोगों के मन में है, आज के आधुनिक विज्ञान के मन में है, ये बहुत गलत भाव है। पर इसके बहुत सारे, हम तो ये कहेंगे कि आधुनिक विज्ञान में भी भावातीत ध्यान आपने सुना होगा, इस पर 700 से ज्यादा रिसर्च पब्लिश हो चुकी हैं अच्छे बड़े पीयर रिव्यूड जर्नल्स में ऑन द इफेक्ट्स ऑफ ट्रांसेंडेंटल मेडिटेशन। ये जो 700 रिसर्चेस जो पब्लिश हुई हैं, ये सब क्या बताती हैं? इफेक्ट्स ऑफ मेडिटेशन on the human being seen with in the eyes of science, seeing with the you can say with scientific perspective, आज के साइंटिफिक को हम कहेंगे। तो ये है, इनका असर बहुत ज्यादा होता है, हर चीज में होता है। आप
आनंद जी,
क्षेत्र में ले लें, आप किसी और भी क्षेत्र में, सभी क्षेत्रों में लें, इसका असर होता है।
आनंद जी, इससे जुड़ा एक सवाल ये आता है मन में कि देखिए, इस वक्त मंदिर, मस्जिद, गुरुद्वारे, जितने धार्मिक स्थल है सब बंद है। कुछ बहुत ही ऐसे, कुछ कभी ईद हुआ और अब कल राम मंदिर का कार्यक्रम हुआ। ऐसे अपवाद को छोड़ दीजिए, धार्मिक स्थल बंद है, तो ज्यादातर लोग अपने घर में ही जो है पूजा इत्यादि करते हैं। दूसरी तरफ योग, ध्यान, मेडिटेशन ये कर रहे हैं। ये धार्मिकता, बीइंग रिलीजियस, और आध्यात्मिकता, ये जो बीइंग स्पिरिचुअल
जी,
इसमें आप क्या समझते हैं कि आज के इस संकट को सामना करने में ज्यादा आपको लगता है कि प्रभावी ज्यादा कौन सा है?
ये दोनों अलग अलग नहीं है। जो पूजा पाठ कह लें या ध्यान और प्राणायाम और ये सब चीजें कह लें, ये दोनों में कोई खास फर्क नहीं है। ये दोनों ही असल में उसी मार्ग में मतलब जो उद्देश्य है वहीं पर पहुंचते हैं। चाहे आप भक्ति के भाव से ले लें, चाहे आप ज्ञान के हिसाब से ले लें, जो आध्यात्मिकता है और ये है, दोनों एक ही चीजें हैं। हाँ, ये बात जरूर है कि वाणी के 4 स्तर होते हैं। एक होता है बैखरी का स्तर, जो हम बोलते हैं। दूसरा होता है मध्यमा का स्तर, मध्यमा मतलब थोड़ा और शांत स्वर में बोलना शुरू किया। तीसरा होता है उससे भी ज्यादा रिफाइंड स्तर, पश्यंती का स्तर, जिसमें हम बात को देखते हैं। पश्य कहते हैं ना, देखना, तो देखते हैं, यानी बहुत सूक्ष्म स्तर की वाणी सुनते हैं। और चौथा होता है परा का स्तर। परा के स्तर की जो वाणी होती है वो सबसे ज्यादा शक्तिशाली होती है, क्योंकि वो वाणी के या विचार के स्रोत से निकलती है। तो जैसे जैसे ऊपर आती जाती है वो थोड़ा सा उसकी शक्ति कम होती जाती है, लेकिन ये है। अब यहाँ पर आप ये कह लें कि पूजा पाठ जो है, ये जो अपने ये क्या कहेंगे, अनुष्ठान इत्यादि जो हैं, ये क्रिया के क्षेत्र के हैं। मतलब उस तरफ आ गए बैकरी और मध्यमा, परा के पश्चंती के क्षेत्र में आ गए। परा के क्षेत्र में आध्यात्मिक बातें हैं जो साधना और धारणा, ध्यान, समाधि का स्तर आता है, ये आ जाता है परा के क्षेत्र का। तो है तो वही चीजें।
आनंद जी, दो भाव आते हैं जब आप संकट के घड़ी से गुजरते हैं। एक, 5 महीने से सब बंद है, बेरोजगारी का दौर है, आप बाहर नहीं निकल पा रहे हैं, अपने जान पहचान वालों के भी आप मृत्यु की खबर सुनते हैं तो आप उसमें शामिल नहीं हो पाते हैं, उनके दुख में आप अपना संवेदना नहीं प्रकट कर पाते हैं। तो दो तरह के भाव उत्पन्न होते हैं। एक होता है एक सेल्फ रियलाइजेशन, जहां आप कुछ सच्चाइयों को आप महसूस करते हैं कि सच में ये कुछ में कुछ रखा नहीं है, आपके प्रॉपर्टी, आपके गाड़ी घोड़ा, एक तरफ उस तरह का एक भावना आती है कि भाई मेरे लिए मेरे सगे संबंधी, मेरे करीबी जो परिवार है वो ज्यादा मायना रखता है। पद, ये सब चीज, आज कोई देश का गृह मंत्री हो या मुख्यमंत्री हो, कोई इससे बच के नहीं गया, तो इसमें बहुत ज्यादा कुछ नहीं है। और दूसरी तरफ एक उदासीनता की भाव भी आता है, जिसे कहते हैं कि एक शमशान वैराग, जिसको आप कह सकते हैं। तो ऐसे में उस संतुलन को बनाए रखना वो कितना आवश्यक है और वो कैसे संभव है?
हाँ, वहां पर उस संतुलन को बनाए रखना आवश्यक तो बहुत है, क्योंकि भौतिक साधन की हमें आवश्यकता है। भौतिक साधनों के बिना जो भौतिक शरीर है वो, उसकी रक्षा नहीं हो सकती है, या भौतिक चीजों की रक्षा वो नहीं हो सकती। दूसरा ये है कि वैराग्य भाव आ गया तो भी वो ठीक नहीं है। कारण उसका ये है कि वैराग्य भाव आ गया तो फिर वहां जो श्मशान वैराग्य खास तौर से जो है, वो अगर आ गया तो फिर आदमी कुछ करेगा ही नहीं, और वो एक, हम तो ये कहेंगे, धरती पर बोझ बन गया। तो वो भी नहीं आना है। तो दोनों में संतुलन बहुत आवश्यक है, और यहाँ पर ही अध्यात्म का एक बहुत बड़ा रोल है। अध्यात्म का रोल क्या है? अध्यात्म हमें बताता है, एक हमारे उसमें काफी प्रसिद्ध मुहावरा है, अंग्रेजी में उसको कहते हैं, यू सी थिंग्स नॉट एज दे आर बट एज यू आर। आपकी जो चेतना है उसी हिसाब से आपको सारी दुनिया दिखाई दे। तो यहाँ भगवान ने जो दुनिया बनाई है, ये किसी भी प्रकार से दुख के लिए नहीं बनाई है, क्योंकि हमारा जो मानव जीवन है ये आनंद पर आधारित है। वो एक उपनिषद का वाक्य है ना, आनंदाध्येव खल विमानि भूतानि जायन्ते। तो ये जो आनंद पर आधारित अगर हमारा जीवन है तो इसमें दुख का कोई स्थान नहीं है। तो यहाँ पर ही वो जो अध्यात्म की बात है ये बहुत आवश्यक हो जाती है। आध्यात्मिक प्रैक्टिसेस मतलब ध्यान, आसन, प्राणायाम, समाधि इत्यादि जो है, ये जहाँ हमने इसका प्रयोग शुरू कर दिया, अपने आप संतुलन स्थापित हो जाएगा हमारे जीवन में। अपने आप हमें हर चीज में भगवान की मंशा जो है, जो भगवान हमसे चाहते हैं, वो दिखने लगेगी। तो
थैंक यू।
धन्यवाद, बहुत ही सार्थक चर्चा रहा। धन्यवाद,
सार्थक चर्चा रहा। थैंक यू। दिस वाज अ फॉर्मल 4th एपिसोड ऑफ हील दाई संवाद, एंड विच विल कीप कंटिन्यूइंग। आनंद जी को हम फिर वापस बुला रहे हैं अपने शाम के सेशन में, 3rd सेशन में। एंड सर बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका। बड़ा स्वामी जी का आशीर्वाद से हमने ये 4th एपिसोड संवाद का आज किया और आगे हम चर्चा बाकी जारी रखेंगे. नाउ विल स्टार्ट विद आवर second India Healthcare E-Summit. And for this, I would like Ankit to formally introduce all the panelists, and then we'll give it over to Shankar sir, who's the moderator, and Ms. Jamwal from Radio Mirchi. She is the co-host of the session today. And but I'd like to tell everyone that we are on Facebook Live. We are on about more than 150 accounts of Facebook Live. And so we have shared the link in the chat also. You can also share on your Facebook so that it goes live to as many people it reaches to, and as many people benefit out of it. Over to you, Ankit, please.
First session will start with a pandemic all set to change the healthcare we know. The panelist for the session will be Dr. Dharminder Nagar, MD and CEO of Paras Hospital, experienced managing director with a demonstrated history of working in the hospital and healthcare industry, skilled in business planning, management, healthcare management, and accreditations, strong business development professional, graduated from Singularity University. The second panelist will be Dr. Anil Dhar. He is a neurosurgeon, Max Super Specialty Hospital. Dr. Anil Dhar is a general surgeon and neurosurgeon in Patparganj, Delhi, and has an experience of 14 years in this field. Dr. Anil Dhar practices at Max Super Specialty Hospital in Patparganj, Delhi. He completed MBBS from Rani Durgavati Vishwavidyalaya, Jabalpur in 2000, MS General Surgery from Sher Kashmir Institute of Medical Sciences, Srinagar in 2005, and MCH Neurosurgery in Sher Kashmir Institute of Medical Sciences, Srinagar in 2001. The other panelist will be Dr. Manoj Agrawal. He is MD, Saigent Hospital. Dr. Manoj Agrawal is a senior consultant urologist, andrologist, sexologist, uro-oncologist, and renal transplant surgeon associated with JP Hospital at Noida. Being one of the best urologists in Vaishali, Greater Noida, Noida, Ghaziabad, he has special interest in uro-oncology, endourology, laparoscopic urology, and renal transplant surgeries. He has performed more than 10,000 endourological procedures like PCNL, URS, etc. Then we have with us Dr. Somnath Patil. He is Executive Director, Dr. D.Y. Patil Vidyapeeth. As a young, dynamic, and active personality, he has performed the role of Executive Director very well. His work style always wanting to design, develop, and implement strategy plan for the institution in a cost-effective and time-efficient manner. He personally looks into the matters like day-to-day operations of the organization, including managing committees and staff and developing business plans. Then we have with us Mr. Vivek Tiwari. He is founder and CEO of Medica Bazaar. Mr. Vivek Tiwari has a deep understanding of the Indian market and its segments across population strata, rich first-hand exposure to both premium niche marketing on brands and mass brands. He is also familiar with unstructured environment, having developed a new sales distribution system, have had major exposure in consumer service, primarily in operations, sales, and marketing, managing P&L in different industries like telecom, healthcare, DTH, and FMCG. Then we have Ms. Nancy Jan with us. She is Honorary Mentor, Stratford, India. As an accomplished professional with over 16 years of rich experience in corporate affairs, regulatory, corporate communication, marketing, crisis management, brand building, and public relations with highly reputed corporates at a senior level. She was a part of the team that facilitated Dr. Gangdeep Kang, the first woman scientist elected as the FRS, and she is leading the effort for developing the vaccine for COVID, and Dr. V.S. Chauhan, Distinguished Biotechnology Research Professor's Lifetime Achievement in Science and Institutional Leadership. Our host for the day will be Mr. R. Shankar. He is President of HEAL Foundation. He has more than 30 years of experience in the field of journalists, has conducted over 7 National Health Writers Workshops and 200 HEAL Health Writer Workshops and conventions. He is formerly associated with New Indian Express as resident editor and later took over as editor of www.msn.com. Currently, he is the chairman of organizing committee of HEAL Foundation, Health Writers and Editor Convention, and consultant with many media houses. His co-host will be RJ Shwetima Jamwal. She works at 98.3 Radio Mirchi. RJ Jamwal introduces herself to listeners as Jammu Di Kudi. She owns a voice that would make you want to befriend her instantly. She has the capability to serve positivity and enthusiasm just with her way of delivering speech. Her outlook on life makes you wonder about her journey as has been and what all she must have experienced and learned to be what she is and where she is today. So I request Shankar sir over to you to start the session.
कैसे सर?
I think Shankar sir has come.
He will.
Okay. He faces the connection problem at times. So, do we have Dr. Nagar on the panel already, or he's joining in? So, Shwetima, can you start the session? Shankar sir
Yeah,
has a loose connection at times. He'll just join in a minute. Yeah.
and I'm sure everybody today who all we have here, namaskar everyone. My name is Shwetima and I'm so happy and I feel privileged being a part of this wonderful summit. And in these times, current times where everybody is going through something or the other, conversations like these with people of such high intellect would be such amazing thing. So thank you so much, Heal Foundation, for taking such initiative in association with the Strata First. So yes, we are all excited, I'm sure. And Shankar sir was supposed to take up this session, but I will take this opportunity to proceed ahead. I'm sure you all are like able to listen to me because in Jammu we have 2G issues and the voice is sometimes not audible. So am I audible?
Yes. Very audible. Yes.
Very audible.
All right, great. So I'm sure ये जो आज का हमारा session है, a pandemic all set to change the healthcare we know. I am sure each one of us is able to connect to it because in a country like ours, हमारे हर घर में एक डॉक्टर बसता है और हर किसी के पास हर बीमारी का कोई ना कोई इलाज है. अरे जुकाम हो गया है तो ऐसा कर लो, बीमार हो तो ऐसा कर लो. We refrain from visiting actual doctors and हमारे पास कहते हैं ना देसी नुस्खे हर चीज के लिए तैयार रहते हैं. बट अभी जिस तरह के समय में हम लोग जी रहे हैं, आई एम श्योर हेल्थ केयर एक ऐसी इंडस्ट्री है जिसमें बहुत मेजर रेवोल्यूशन की जरूरत भी है और कहीं ना कहीं पूरे देश को उस रेवोल्यूशन को अडाप्ट भी करना पड़ेगा. So we are all set to ask a lot of questions to all the special people who have joined us as the panel members. So to begin with, मैं वही सोच रही हूँ कि मैं शुरू कहाँ से करूँ. तो मेरी डॉक्टर अनिल से आज सुबह भी बात हुई थी, तो आई थिंक हम वहीं से शुरू करते हैं. डॉक्टर अनिल धर जो कि एक न्यूरोसर्जन है और जम्मू कश्मीर से इनका बहुत अच्छा सा राब्ता है. तो डॉक्टर अनिल, डेफिनेटली यू आर अ न्यूरोसर्जन और मैंने आपसे ये सवाल पहले भी किया था कि इस वक्त में अगर हम न्यूरल डिसऑर्डर्स की बात करें या एंजाइटी और डिप्रेशन की बात करें, दैट हैज एक्चुअली इमर्ज्ड अ लॉट. तो ऑल अक्रॉस इंडिया आपके पास भी बहुत सारे इस तरह के केसेस सामने आते होंगे जिनको कैसे डील करें. यू एक्चुअली गेट पॉइंटलेस बिकॉज लोग सुनना नहीं चाहते, बस सुनाना चाहते हैं. तो डू ऑल दोस व्हाट यू हैव टू से.
डॉक्टर धर आपको म्यूट हटाना पड़ेगा सर, म्यूट हटाना पड़ेगा डॉक्टर.
Good evening, everyone, and I thank the organizers for getting me here. जो पहला जो आपने क्वेश्चन किया है तो बहुत अच्छा क्वेश्चन है कि जो इसके साथ ब्रेन रिलेटेड या जिसे हम माइंड रिलेटेड इश्यूज हैं उसके बारे में बात करते हैं. जो अक्सर जो कोरोना के रिलेटेड पेशेंट्स होते हैं ना, उनके मन में एक टाइप का फियर होता है, जो कि एक पेंडेमिक जब भी होता है या एपिडेमिक बोलिए या बीमारी बोलिए, पेंडेमिक तो एक एक्सट्रीम फॉर्म है. इसमें क्या होता है कि जो नॉर्मल आदमी होता है उसका जो रिस्पॉन्स रहता है वो यही रहता है कि फर्स्ट की उससे डरता है वो. सेकंड चीज रहता है कि वो वैसी चीजें करता है कि जिससे वो अपने आप को प्रोटेक्ट करे, अपनी लाइफ को बचाए. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल कोरोना की बात करें हम, तो कोरोना में जैसे हाथ धोना, मास्क लगाना, थोड़ा सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग करना, ये एक नेचुरल जो पेंडेमिक का जो इंसान का नेचुरल ये है डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म. बट अगर यही डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म एक लेवल को क्रॉस करता है, मतलब बार बार हाथ धो रहा है, वही काम कर रहा है, मास्क ही नहीं हटा रहा, तो उसकी इसमें हम उसको बोलते हैं कि इसको टुवर्ड्स जिसको आप डिप्रेशन बोलते हैं या बीमारी की ओर जा रहा है वो बोल रहे हैं. जो कोरोना के रिलेटेड मोस्टली जो मोस्ट कॉमन चीज है वो तो एक नंबर एक डिप्रेशन होता है. दूसरा चीज होता है एंजाइटी. जैसे हर कोई आजकल आप जितने भी आई एम श्योर जितने भी पैनलिस्ट है वो ये दिमाग अपने साथ भी सोचते होंगे दिन में कई बार कि शायद हो गया कोरोना, शायद वहां नहीं जाऊं. कोई कई बार फीवर चेक करते हैं टच करके कहीं हो तो नहीं गया. तो जो एंजाइटी लेवल होता है ना, एंजाइटी लेवल का भी एक लेवल होता है, उसके आगे अगर बढ़ गया हो तो मे बी उसको मेडिसिन की जरूरत है. ऐसे ही नींद कम आना एक और इश्यू है, जो यूजुअली जब आदमी सोचता रहता है, एक उसके स्ट्रेसफुल कंडीशन होती है, नींद नहीं आती है, तो उसके चलते क्या होता है कि उसका जो नींद का पैटर्न है वो भी खराब हो जाता है। ये सिर्फ कॉमन जो पॉपुलेशन है उनके साथ नहीं है, बट जैसे मैं एज ए डॉक्टर, जो जितने भी हेल्थ केयर वर्कर जैसे नर्सेज हैं जो हॉस्पिटल में काम करती है, उनमें भी पाया गया कि डिप्रेशन बहुत है, एंजाइटी बहुत है, इंसोम्निया बहुत है, कुछ लोगों को दवाई खाने की जरूरत पड़ती है। तो मेरा जो खुद का ये है, जहाँ तक मेरा ताल्लुक है, मैं ये बोलता हूँ कि ऐसे पेशेंट्स को यूजुअली रिलैक्सेशन एक्सरसाइजेस करनी चाहिए, जैसे जो अभी डॉक्टर साहब बोल रहे थे, मेरे से पहले जो बोल रहे थे, तो आपको रिलैक्सेशन एक्सरसाइज करनी पड़ेगी, जैसे योगा है या मेडिटेशन करना पड़ेगा, या कोई भी एक्सरसाइज करें जो आपको फिट रखे, उससे इम्यूनिटी भी बढ़ती है और जो ब्रेन के हमारे फंक्शन है उनको भी वो रेगुलेट करता है और हम अच्छे से इसको फाइट कर सकते हैं।
Dr. Dutt, I'm Secretary. I've got a question for you, Dr. Dutt. Dr. Dutt, this, how are hospitals going to change in the future? Would we see more of minimum touch points? Would we also see more of doctors and paramedic, and how about the infrastructure? On the one hand, we have pandemic, and on the other, we have a rise of infectious diseases coming up. Now, the pandemic is just not the end of the game, as someone said. It's only going to be one more animal in the zoo. So, what will be the future of hospitals?
So, coming to your first question, what will change in the hospitals? First, I think the hospitals little bit were on these lines doing those things these days. For example, teleconsultations, telemeetings, e-prescriptions. You see so many in some hospitals, some robots, they're giving food to the patients, or some artificial intelligence mechanisms, they'll come on. And before this pandemic, no one would ever imagine that you will treat a patient without touching them. On just you see a patient and you prescribe medicines. So one thing with this pandemic that in future will also continue is that the patients will be more often seen on this basis of digital technology. Like we give in our hospital, we give e-prescriptions and WhatsApp calls, video calls, and we try to keep the distance from the patients. So this is the one thing, but another confusing factor which is surely going to come in, I think, in 10-15 days or in a month, is that you have so many infectious diseases going on. It will further confuse the doctor. Suppose a patient has a fever, and the doctor will get confused surely for whether it's a dengue fever, whether it's some other type of fever. So that will become more difficult. So the best way will be, as you all might be doing this, using a mask, sanitizing your hands, and maintaining the social distance. I think the digital thing is going to come in more.
But that's okay with say metros. But what about rural areas? How will that change there?
The rural areas, they can go for there is already some mechanisms have been put in, like the telemedicine. So one bigger hospital can get attached to some peripheral hospital, and this consultations can be done on basis of telemedicine. But the only issue is that for that peripheral health system has to be revised. I mean, it has to be at such a level that the doctor prescribes some treatment. It should be available at that level. That is the only thing what will be the missing, and the healthcare workers should be well trained at that level also.
But this issue is that the PHCs are in a very bad shape.
Yeah, that's where the government role of the government has to come in, because you need to spend more of GDP on healthcare, which the government, which I think at this point of time, everyone, including the government, has come to know that you need to spend more money on health. Previously, what everyone was thinking that the health was the last priority, and personally, I think voters should also vote in terms whether the health of that particular health facilities of that particular area are good or not. They should keep this thing also in mind while voting. This is my personal view. Otherwise, things won't change.
Miss Nancy Jane, I will
Shankar
come
sir,
to
just
you.
one out of curiosity. Yeah, Shankar sir, yeah. So one I wanted to, we have Mr. Vivek Tiwari. So Vivek has been one of the persons who has been into the particularly COVID management, overall healthcare, but in the times of COVID, I have seen he's very thickly into this overall supplies management and helping hospitals with supplies, with demands across the country and across the world. Probably he's working in one of his talks. He was telling that you are running about 100-150 offices parallelly in the time of COVID. So can I ask Vivek to share in 4-5 minutes? Can you share your experience of COVID so that it becomes a base of the discussion of because I think though all respected panelists are into overall healthcare management, and but what I've seen and I know about Medica Bazaar and you and your team, you are probably working 24 hours day and night connecting across the world, across the country with hospitals, doctors, healthcare, government, everywhere. So Vivek, can you just set the base for it? Yeah.
I'm also interested,
Yeah, sure.
Vivek, in your drone delivery system.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Good evening, all eminent panelists, and thank you, Mr. Sudeep, for inviting me here. And so coming back to such such a brilliant discussion point here. But before I tell more about this, let me just quickly in about few sentences explain what we do. So we are Medica Bazaar essentially is a digital platform for all B2B supplies. When we talk about B2B supplies, obviously it involves everything which are required in hospitals, starting with equipment to the last mile pharma or consumables or everything. And we are seemingly developing the largest supply chain efficiency for all medical supplies, especially catering to all tier 2, 3 and beyond, where we can bridge the gaps between manufacturers, sellers, and the customers. Now coming back to this COVID episode, so let me start way back in January. When we saw first couple of cases in India, and when China was reeling under COVID pressure, we used to get a lot of requests from China and across different places on our platform. The request used to come where people would ask for a lot of mask or PPE kits and similar supplies. That was the time we were not at all prepared for it, but we were getting like n number of requests coming from everywhere, and we were trying to figure out what was happening and why suddenly there is a lot of demand for mask, which was being sold at 16-20 rupees earlier. Now suddenly it's become so pricey item, and more so like PPE kits and all. So that was the time when we had the first brush with COVID, outside India. And we tried to help many Chinese buyers, especially the likes of Alibaba and all. They were trying to reach out to us and trying to source material for China requirement. So from there, in fact, our journey began with COVID interaction. It's still like it's going the same way, I would say. And moreover, when we saw that situation developing in India in February and maybe primarily from 3rd or 4th week of March, when the cases started gradually picking up to 3-digit and then to 4-digit numbers on a daily basis. Obviously, our government became more conscious, and we had lockdowns, and during lockdowns we had major issues. Hospitals was primarily getting panicked about availability of masks, PPE kits and all. We used to get a lot of requests that there was a lot of supply constraint. Manufacturers did not have enough inventory. In fact, import was a major problem. I'll tell you, certain cases we had to wait for 15 days at certain Chinese port to get material lifted to India. So I think there was a huge supply chain issue that point in time, not just looking at the domestic market, but also looking at the global, kind of opportunity also, where you had suppliers who were willing to give the material, but getting them back to India was very difficult. And we were trying to cope up with this pressure despite of such challenges. Our team was there on the ground. We were trying to make sure that every order was to be fulfilled. Though I'll tell you, there were times when even Delhi to Bangalore, like one vehicle used to take about 11-12 days because there were a lot of disruptions. A lot of places it was stopped. There used to be multiple level checks also. So all of these were leading to a lot of disruptions in the timeline and supply chain efficiency. And hospitals primarily, I would say, have really been under immense pressure, primarily because the core medical business or core medical care within the hospitals have been under tremendous setback. Elective surgeries, where in fact our revenues were primarily contributed by elective surgeries and the regular requirements in hospitals, had seen a major fall. Uh, Primarily, we could survive only because of COVID supplies, and that was the main element where we were trying to ensure that every healthcare facility or doctors could get supplies on time. That was very challenging at some point, but we were trying to do the best what we could. In fact, we have about 500 team members all over India, and as Mr. Sudeep rightly said, we were running all home offices, and there were close to 300-400 home offices running. We had people on the ground who were trying to deliver, so everything was quite disrupted. And even today also, we don't see major respite, though something has improved obviously in supply chain. But again, I would say there has been huge setback to overall healthcare fraternity, and it will take some time before we get back to normal. Still, people are.
Have you been using drones for? Have you been using drones for cutting the supply chain? The delays in supply chain.
Well, we signed up with Zipline as their first private partnership outside US. In fact, Zipline has always been government partner. So Medica Bazaar and Zipline have been into a private partnership for drone supplies in India. But the problem is, in fact, the government has not allowed commercial drone operations as of now.
Yes,
so we are just doing testing phases. But hopefully, in another maybe 5 or 6 months, we will have that operations going on smoothly within Maharashtra and beyond. We are also tying up with few other operators and try to make sure that at least the critical supplies do not get delayed or do not disturbed because of any challenges in logistics and especially looking at the criticality of the supplies. So that's where we will definitely contribute going forward.
But do you use artificial intelligence to predict what's the problem coming ahead?
Yes, we do a lot of technology interface in the way we manage our operations, and we manage the future business scenarios. In fact, the one classic example what we did was, it's a US patent filed and Indian patent filed application. The name is Vizi. Vizi is a predictive inventory modeling tool, which essentially, if you have past consumption and considering the future scenarios of pandemic and all, we are developing a lot of realistic algorithms there which can help hospital project the right kind of inventory they need to manage their hospital environment. And coming to such a stressful situation today where cash management is becoming a big challenge, I think these kind of solution can really help hospitals look at primarily reducing their working capital burden, and also look at only just-in-time supplies, and rest others can be taken care by Medica Bazaar efficiency. So obviously, we are trying to help hospitals with a lot of technology intervention like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all of that.
So before we will take a final round of questions from Shwetima, because she has built up a momentum for questions, and we'll come back to you. Can we have quick bites from Dr. Manoj Agrawal and Nancy? So Dr. Manoj, you're there, sir? Dr. Manoj Agrawal, can you see your video, sir? Yeah, hello, Dr. Manoj, welcome. Sir, can you put your mute off?
Sure.
Yeah. So you own a hospital in Noida, I believe, and Noida is though being part of NCR, is also like a tier 1 city. Where we are, because initially when COVID started in India, Noida was on the map with one of the highest cases started in Noida and Gurgaon in the NCR and also in Mumbai. So can you share quickly?
Yes, we started the hospital just 6 months ago. In January, we started this Signet Hospital, which is a 100-bedded, primarily focusing on the kidney problems and the urology problems. We have a state-of-the-art dialysis center and the state-of-art modular operation theaters. And sooner we started the operation, the COVID pandemic came into the picture. So we started following all the WHO guidelines like proper sanitations, proper social distancing, personal hygiene. We also put a sanitization tunnel, as well as we also educate the patients regarding the how to prevent the COVID, and we even educate the public nearby the hospital, as well as we made some webinars to educate the people around our hospital surroundings, how to prevent, not to worry about that, not to be, it is just preventable. Just do proper hygiene, follow what the government is saying, download the Arogya Setu app, and if you have any symptoms, you just ask your doctor, so you just call us, and we are here to help you 24/7.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. Nancy, in your profile, Nancy, you're there? Yeah. So Nancy and Stratfirst India, they are our partners, and they have been very supporting in putting this second India Healthcare e-Summit together. I read in your profile and that about your involvement with some COVID-related research. Can you just throw some light on that?
Basically, Stratfirst India facilitated Dr. Gagandeep Kang. She is the first Indian woman scientist who has been elected as an FRS. Now, presently, she's leading an effort for developing vaccine for COVID. She's a very well-known name for developing vaccine right now. Also, we facilitated Dr. V.S. Chauhan. We are associated. He's one of our mentor. He's also a distinguished biotechnology research professor and is very regular in updating and writing articles on COVID pandemic related information. He's sharing continuously on many portals.
Yeah, thank you. So over to you, Shwetima. I think you had a lot of questions. One question I'll ask on your behalf to Vivek: when is your drone reaching Kashmir? Because that is one of the very tough terrain, difficult area. So when is your drone reaching Kashmir to fill that gap? Over to you, Shwetima.
So, Sudeep bhai, basically what we are trying to aim here is that with drone is mapped the areas which are actually not well covered by the land and basically by even by aerial route primarily, and in between there are intermittent places where you have hilly regions and you have regions which cannot be reached so easily. So basically drones are meant for those kind of challenges. Be rest assured, I can tell you in about maximum 12 to 18 months we will have maximum coverage in those areas primarily where we see primary challenges in reaching out, and that's how even many companies are working towards it. In fact, we are working closely with few other companies also, and we know how the situation is developing. I may not be able to name all the companies here, but primarily areas like J&K, Uttarakhand, northeastern areas, few areas which are in Andhra and in central India and all, which we are mapping and targeting, will get covered primarily step by step basis. So I can tell you maximum about 12 months we'll see a major shift happening.
I think that will be a phenomenal development for healthcare supplies in India. And very much needed, very much needed. Shwetima, yeah, over to you. Please. You have to please remove your mute. Shwetima, please remove your mute. You're on mute, Shwetima. Yeah.
So we'll be waiting for the supplies to reach here at Jammu and Kashmir. My question would be for Nancy, ma'am. I have seen very few women coming forward and working in such crisis times. I am calling these crisis times because I know somewhere mentally, physically, everybody is disturbed or certain issues are there. And at such times, women have a one step extra wala role to play because they have to take care of the families, keep them stronger, keep yourself stronger. And then when you are working on a professional front like somebody like you, how difficult it is to cope up with all such scenarios and come forward with solutions.
Shwetama, I believe it's not difficult. It's basically setting your priorities right. I mean, every role has a special place in your life. So when it comes to a professional life, it has a special place wherein you can't really let go any professional commitment because of your personal commitments. So I believe personal commitments have their own space and which and require their own time. So I'm basically just every woman, not me. I think every woman like you also. I'm sure you're also prioritizing your work and your personal life. So it's basically maintaining a balance between your personal life and private professional life. That's it.
One thing which I have noticed in a lot of women, specifically, women hesitate to visit a doctor. Rather, they will have their own nuskhas to like come out of any problems. So, if we talk about the healthcare, women are the one who hesitate visiting doctors, taking consultations, and then taking the proper medications. So, when we talk about the healthcare revolution, how do you think is going to change it?
Healthcare revolution is dependent upon one factor, which is how much educated we are. If we are educated enough that this ailment will not be able to heal this ailment with our own ghar ka nuksas, and we have to take proper prescriptions, so obviously we will approach the healthcare support for this. So it's entirely depending upon the education level that we all have. So education plays a very critical role, and I'm sure healthcare revolution will go side by side with this education parameters. So it's very important for everyone to be educated, to find the basics of what you're going through, and getting the right prescription and on time is what is important. And healthcare revolution will play an important role, because nowadays everyone, because of this social media and online platforms, everyone is so much educated that no one wants to just depend on their ghar ka nuksas, for getting themselves better.
But how do you use knowledge platforms to meet critical challenges ahead, Nancy?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
How do you use knowledge platforms to meet critical challenges ahead?
For us, I think knowledge platforms are very important, and we need to develop and focus on knowledge platforms with 2 points. Basically, we need to focus on holistic healing, which derives its strength from traditional medicines, Unani, and you can say homeopathic, allopathy. Basically, trying and developing knowledge platforms in a way that we are able to maintain a synergy between the wisdom of Baba Ramdev and the modern science of Sipla per se. Also, I think knowledge platforms are very crucial to bring a synergy between the promoters of health, the practitioners of health, and the consumers of health. So if we are able to maintain a synergy among these 3, and of course the medicines that I just mentioned, then we are in safe hands. And knowledge platforms like all the universities, online, the government initiatives and all that will play an important role by creating a synergy and giving a better perspective and idea and views, and working on the myths which are doing rounds. So this is what I feel knowledge platforms will play a role on.
But briefly, do you think that people who use internet too much also have a problem because they bypass the doctors?
Your voice is I didn't get you.
Can we ask Dr. Anil Dhar, please? Can we ask this question to Dr. Anil? Mr. Shankar, can we ask this question to Dr. Anil Dhar, please?
Yeah, Dr. Anil Dhar, my question was, people now are over dependent on the internet to find out whether they have either COVID, they don't have COVID, or any disease. So this is leading to a sort of paranoia. How is paranoia? So what is your take on this?
Yeah, this is the biggest problem for us as well. Leave aside COVID. I'm talking of, suppose I'm a neurosurgeon and someone has back pain. So first they come, they check from internet what they have, what they don't have. This is the biggest problem these days. So they become that internet doctors. So in this pandemic times, visiting internet is okay. But if you keep on checking again and again, then at some point of time, you'll feel that you actually have a COVID. I have seen so many patients who discuss, I have this sore throat, I have this, and I read from somewhere that you have loss of smell, you have all those things, and I want to get my test done. So such problems are there, but you have to educate people. That is the only thing you can that comes to my mind. And you tell them that from the social media, from anything else, you have to educate basically the people. This is the only.
In fact, there's a study in Enhance which shows that cyberchondria is the biggest problem that is emerging. They call it cyberchondria. Yeah.
And one more thing is that they start taking drugs of their own. So when they see that there is a fever, they start antibiotics. They take hydroxychloroquine. I have seen so many patients. They self-medicate. That is the biggest problem. At least the reading up to a level of reading is okay, but taking medications they should not.
So why?
And it is
Yes. Dr. Thar, you're saying something, yeah?
I said that they should not take medicine, and they should in these pandemic times you should watch less of these pandemic news. You should watch less of this thing internet. That's the best thing you can do.
Yeah. So today's session is the pandemic all set to change the world we live. Can I have a last line from each of the panelists, starting from Vivek and going up to Shwetima also? That what is the key change you see which will happen in the world, in our country? Vivek, your wisdom on this?
Yeah. So coming from seeing the pandemic with close quarters, I think we have to learn to live in new normal. We have to stop fearing about this, and we have to take precautions. That's absolutely there. But as rightly said by Dr. Dhar, I think we have to contain ourselves, not getting too much information unnecessary, reading about virus too much. And I think there are many things to worry about in life. So I would rather say and request people to think positive, think proactive, learn to live life in a new normal, take precaution, and live life to the fullest. I think these things will keep on coming and going. We should not get stopped at this level.
So in the end, I'll come to Professor Pandav also, and then we jump on to the next session. Can we have one word from Dr. Dhar, sir? What do you think? What major change you see from your wisdom? So you're on mute.
I think one thing what pandemic has taught everyone is that we all religions and whatever thing we are at the same level. Virus doesn't differentiate among one individual or the other. If he's rich, poor, virus can affect anyone. So you can spend crores and crores on security, but you need to spend at least something on the healthcare.
Brilliant. Nancy, your take, please.
I think this pandemic has taught us and prepared us mentally. Earlier, I don't think we have any one of us has faced such a situation. So we are mentally prepared, and now we know whether focus on myth or reality. I mean, there is a scientific approach to follow or myths which are doing right. So we are mentally prepared and ready to approach it in a better way.
Brilliant. Dr. Manoj, I think he's dropped out. His connection was poor. So, sir, Dr. Pandav is with us. He's a deep pioneer of iodization of salt in India, due to which we get iodized salt in our country today, and which has prevented thousands and lakhs of people to being diseased. So, sir, your wisdom, please, on this. So you're on mute, sir. Dr. Pandav, you're on mute, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I am a little shocked that even after 120 days, we are still using the term social distancing. I've said it repeatedly that it is the most asocial, antisocial, derogatory, harsh word that is used in the Indian context. It is physical space distancing, not social distancing. In the Indian context, social distancing is a very sensitive term. It means you are untouchable. It's a different story that we are all untouchables today because we can't touch each other because of the coronavirus. That's number 1 point after 120 days. Second point is my famous dialogue from Dawn and Agnipath. Greeting coronavirus. So there are two versions of Dawn 1 and Dawn 2. Amitabh Bachchan and Zeenat Aman, Shah Rukh Khan and Priyanka Chopra. The first, when greeting coronavirus, it says that Dawn ko pakadna mushkil hi nahi, namumkin hai, because coronavirus was invisible. Now we have traveled so much in the last 120 days. I'm reminded of the dialogue from Agnipath, Sanjay Dutt. जब तुम्हारा दुश्मन तुमसे ताकतवान रहता है, शक्तिशाली हो रहता है, तो एक चीज समझ लो कि उसके साथ प्यार से रहो, उसके साथ समझौता करो, ताकि आपकी उम्र भी लंबी हो जाएगी और आपका दुश्मन भी खुश रहे.
So that is greeting coronavirus, or meeting and eating with coronavirus. That's what I would say. Thank you, sir. Shwetima, you have been interacting with thousands of experts and people from different section of the society as RJ of Radio Mirchi. So, what
Yes.
would be your few liners on your experience and your where we are and where you think we'll move to?
डॉक्टर पांडव ने एक बहुत अच्छी सी लाइंस बताई तो उससे मुझे एक शायरी याद आई है कि सफर में हम सफर की तलाश तो ना थी, कि सफर में हम सफर की तलाश तो ना थी, पर कोई तुमसा मिल जाएगा ये भी कहाँ सोचा था. Which means कि in these times nobody had thought that we will come across anything like this, but yes, since we have come across such a thing, तो कहते हैं ना आदत सी डालनी पड़ेगी. And I think people are learning to live with it. A lot of obstacles, but yes, we are growing each day. अगर मैं youngsters की बात करूँ, families की बात करूँ, I think after ages, हम लोगों ने आपस में एक दूसरे के साथ वक्त बिताया है. I got to meet business people who were saying that my kids had literally forgot कि मुझे क्या क्या पसंद था because I never used to stay with them. So these things हर मुश्किल वक्त हमें जीने में ना जिंदगी में कुछ बेहतर बनना सिखाता है. So I'm sure in all the tough times, we are definitely going to grow together, stronger and better.
Thank you. I think since we have shortage of time, Shankar sir, on your behalf, I would like to close this panel and move on to the second, which is a little serious one, with medical experts from India and UK on where do we stand in the pandemic. Just with two announcements, we are live on about 150 Facebook pages. The Facebook page link, link is been shared with all speakers and all the participants, so you can also log on Facebook. Second is we have first time instituted a COVID Hero Award. We have selected, shortlisted 8 individuals, not organizations. This COVID Hero Award is for individuals whom we want to honor for their voluntary contribution to COVID management in their society, in the community where they were living. So as I was telling Shwetima in the morning, there is one DSP from Kashmir who has done a brilliant job on creating a COVID community and delivering drugs free of cost, doing a lot of other social work for COVID sufferers and for the community as a whole. Similarly, we have 8 such selected candidates, selected COVID fighters from across the country. With this, I will hand over. Thank you all panelists. Thank you for being here today. And with this, I hand over. We'll keep on this discussion and the series of our COVID Fighters Safety Movement Program going forward. And with this, I hand over to Mr. Shankar to take over the second session, please. Thank you, Shwetima. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you, Dr. Manoj.
Thank you, Sunil
and
bhai.
Thank you, Dr.
So
thank you.
Yeah, Shankar sir, before we start the second session, I'll just briefly introduce our panelists for the day.
Yes.
So today with you, we have a co-moderator, Mr. C.H. Unnikrishnan. He's editor of Future Medicine India. He founded the Future Medicine, India's first medical science news magazine for the clinicians and healthcare fraternity in 2018. Demonstrated strong history of working in the publishing industry and long association with several large and mainstream media organizations, skilled in news analysis writing, breaking news, feature, and editing in business, science, and financial journalism. Professional specialization in health and life sciences, intellectual property rights, and trade law. Special interest in art, music, movies, and creative writing. Then we have with us Ms. Yvonne Biggins. She is mental health and well-being expert at Day to Day Health, well-being and positive psychology practitioner and coach with a technology and marketing background as a result-driven strategic and creative thinker who can build and motivate teams and challenge the status quo to achieve the best results. Also act as business mentor, co-active coach, and MBSR mindfulness teacher. Then we have with us Dr. J.C. Suri. He is chairman of JCS Institute of Pulmonology. Pulmonologist by training, Professor J.C. Suri is a pioneer of critical care and sleep medicine in India. He worked at Safdarjung Hospital from 1984 to 2018, where he has instrumental in creating India's first holistic pulmonary critical care and sleep medicine department, which he headed from 1990 to 2018. Professor Suri set up the first physician-run intensive care unit in northern India with the aim to provide integrated diagnostic, supportive, and therapeutic services to critically ill patients. He is also regarded as the father of sleep medicine in India and is credited for establishing the first sleep laboratory in the country in 1990. Last but not the least, we have with us Dr. Tarun Sahani. He is founder and director, Advent Healthcare Private Limited. He is also head of hyperbaric medicine and senior consultant internal medicine at Apollo Hospital. Dr. Sahani is an alumnus of Armed Forces Medical College following which he served the Indian Navy for over a decade and took voluntary release to pursue his aspirations. He then worked in the UK and UAE prior to coming back to India to establish India's first private hyperbaric treatment center at the Apollo Hospital, Delhi in the year 2000, which he currently heads. Dr. Sahni is known as the father of the modern hyperbaric medicine in India and has over 25 publications and chapters in his books. Thank you. Over to you, Shankar, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ankit. I will start with Dr. Suri. Well, Dr. Suri, we are meeting again. Welcome. Well, and Dr. Farun also, I think we are meeting for the second time. Welcome. Basic question to you, Dr. Suri, is that the topic is, of course, where do we stand in this pandemic? So my basic question would be to you, at what stage of the pandemic are we currently, and when will India peak?
Yes, it is very difficult to define at the moment where we are, but we are somewhere, I would say, close to middle of the pandemic. And India is a very big country with the large number of states, and we cannot define one single peak for this large country, which is so heterogeneous. You can say that the big cities like Mumbai, Delhi, probably you can say that they are past their peak, but then there are other states where the numbers are rising. And if you see overall, the cases are rising in India, and the peak will keep shifting from one place to the other place depending upon the number of cases. And we know that if you look into the natural history of a pandemic or epidemic, we know that when a given percentage of people, become immune or develop immunity against this infection due to either natural infection or due to vaccination, then we can achieve a significant degree of herd immunity. And if you want to look specifically from COVID-19 point of view and taking into account its reproductive number, then that number should be somewhere between 70 to 75%. So that means we need to have at least 70 to 75% of the population getting immunity from COVID-19, either through natural infection or through vaccination. And going by the serosurveillance data, Delhi data, where we found that about 23.4% of the people have got infected so far. Although if you go into some, pockets in Mumbai, particularly the slums in Mumbai like Dharavi, they have found that about 50% of the people get infected. So if you see these serosurveillance data, then we are far away from getting out of the pandemic. We are still somewhere, I would say, not even in the middle. If you want to take the total picture in India, and though the number of cases are coming down, but still we have a large number of vulnerable population which can get infected and become sick. So it is very important that we should continue with the important infection control measures of like physical distancing, hand hygiene, not going to the crowded people, maintaining 6 feet distance. These are the measures which work in preventing the spread of this infection, and that is why probably the number of cases have gone down. But the population at large is still vulnerable. So far away.
Yeah, but one silver lining is that the rate of death is extremely low in India when you compare to US, to Spain, to Belgium. Why is that so?
See, there can be number of reasons. We don't know exactly. If you see by percentage wise, even in India, I think it is being set between 2 to 3%. But it is very difficult to define this case fatality because we don't know the exact number of people who are infected. So if you again look into the recent figures of asymptomatic people, then I think somewhere it is between 20 to 45%. If 20 to 45% of the people develop asymptomatic disease, which are not diagnosed, but which are there in the community and spreading the disease. So if these are the people who are not counted. So if you put them into the denominator, then I think the case fatality rate may be somewhere around 1%. Then what we have between 3 to maybe 2.5 to 3%. So if you go by the number of deaths, we already have 40,000 deaths, and in US it is about 1.5 lakh. So that way, but the US has a large, much more number of cases than this. So you may not, our fatality may be very close to the global that way figures, But it is very, but as I mentioned to you, the denominator for calculating case fatality rate is very deceptive here, because we won't be able to count asymptomatic patients, which may constitute 40 to 45% in a population. So it's a very difficult question to answer, that way.
Yeah, Unikrishnan, you want to?
Dr. Suri, I just wanted to ask you, which is very closely connected to what you said right now, is that what is the right denominator to compare the fatality rate and the total caseload? Is it the total infection or the total people who have been infected severely, or who have presented the severeness of the disease?
So then it will be a changing matrix. As such, we say that the number of people who get infected by the disease, that means those who are RT-PCR positive, and the number of people die. So case fatality would depend upon how we define a case. So it depends on the case definition. And a case of COVID-19 is one who is positive by RT-PCR. And that's for the present definition. So, or if you want to define symptomatic cases, so even in the symptomatic cases, there is a wide spectrum. This is, I would say, in my own career of 3 to 4 decades, I have not seen a disease which has got such a wide spectrum of clinical presentation, where you have on one side, on one end of the spectrum, where 20 to 45% of the people are totally asymptomatic. And then you have people with mild symptoms. And on the other extreme, on the end of the spectrum, there are people who are admitted in the ICU. They are on ventilators, and they are on various life support measures, and they die of the disease. So such a wide spectrum of clinical presentation, make this disease very unique. And that's why it's difficult to calculate the case fatality rate in this case.
Correct. And also the comorbidity is playing a larger reason.
Yes,
for fatalities. So that also need to be taken into consideration, right?
Yes, definitely, because if you see the fatalities due to COVID-19 and you try to study them, then you will see that they are much more as the age increases. So it is much more beyond the age of 50. And then even in younger people, if they have got any kind of comorbidity which brings down their immunity. So the comorbid conditions like diabetes, like cardiovascular disease, or people with cancers or on immunosuppressive drugs, those who are on steroids, these are things. So age itself is a condition, I would say, which brings down your immunity considerably. So all these things, contribute. But when we are talking about death rate, then, we have to be very careful in terms of defining this metric.
Yeah, that's right. That's very important.
Yeah.
Dr. Tarun, welcome again. I think glad to see you back.
Hello, sir. Nice to meet you, Mr. Shankar. And hello to all the analysts and all the people on the call today.
Dr. Tarun, I would ask a basic question. Just briefly, what is this hyperbaric therapy, and does it in any way help COVID treatment?
I know that's a fascinating question, because there's a lot of coverage in the press on hyperbaric oxygen being used for COVID management. And I'll try and explain that in a very short form. So what we've learned over the years is that the COVID virus actually competes with some of the components in the blood, something similar to what happens in carbon monoxide. So when you have carbon monoxide, it combines with the hemoglobin and it forms carboxyhemoglobin, and hyperbaric oxygen, because of the increased pressure, helps to dissociate the carbon monoxide with hemoglobin. So using the same logic to what is happening in the COVID scenario is that the COVID virus, what we initially thought was a simple pneumonia, is no longer a pneumonia. It does have a direct impact on the blood, and which is why the incidences of thrombotic and events, even many weeks after the COVID, are affected. So a group of doctors in the US, it actually started off because a few of the members of the hyperbaric unit actually got tested positive for COVID. And these were, some of them were Afro-Asians, and they were big built women, and they were having to work on very high flow nasal delivery of oxygen. And even despite that, they were not being able to overcome the hypoxia which the COVID virus was doing. So voluntarily, because they had worked in the hyperbaric unit, and there was a logic to, by increasing the pressure, like we were increasing the flows, that if we increase the flow and we increase the pressure of oxygen, would that have any benefit? And that publication is available on the internet, where it's a series of only 10 patients from a center in the US. And I attended one of the webinars which they had given. So they found that using hyperbaric oxygen in those patients, and that actually triggered a lot of research, because our approach, even with high flow nasal cannulas and high flow oxygen, is to deliver more oxygen to the lungs. So if we can deliver more oxygen to the lungs by increasing the pressure, then it may have a beneficial effect. So while we are learning and experimenting with a lot of treatment options, the option of using hyperbaric oxygen to treat COVID patients, those who are on high nasal flow oxygen, is being used. And there are studies now which say that a lot of these patients can be weaned back to normal flow oxygen rather than them having to go onto the ventilators. So it is still a little early, but there are studies which are doing, there are research, there are, formalized, United States government has facilitated, Medicare has facilitated, the Undersea and Hyperbaric Medical Society has facilitated some studies going in. So there is hope that this could be an additional treatment option available to patients with COVID.
Well, from HBOT, I will go to another interesting topic, is that, recently doctors have found doctors from Tata Memorial Center has published a paper in ICMR Journal of Medical Research, which says that lower incidence of deep vein clots in countries located near the equator, like India, may be one of the reasons for lower mortality in India. For example, mortality in India is about 25 per million compared to 849 in Belgium, 679 in UK, and 470 in US. What's your take on this?
See, I think, taking off from the previous discussion as to which place of the pandemic are we, denominator and nominator and percentages. Now, there is a lot of intrigue and a lot of speculation being done as to why are the Indian mortality rates lower than what is being perceived in the, in West and in the United States. And I think one of them, which, is being promoted, is that we've all been exposed to HCQS, maybe we've all had BCG when we were born, and all these parameters. So one of the other parameters is that maybe the clotting mechanism, which is much more, prevalent in the Western population, because of their thing, is not so prevalent in India. So the incidence of peripheral venous thrombosis in patients with COVID is probably lower in India than in the West. Having said that, there have been instances, including of doctors who got out of COVID, and a couple of days later, a week or two later, they've again come back to the hospital with very severe form of pneumonia, and where we thought that they had pulmonary embolism. And I think now it's almost standard, at least in a hospital, it's standard that patients who had moderate to severe disease, if not mild to moderate, but definitely moderate to severe disease, are being put on low molecular weight heparins and are being put on oral coagulants for at least 2 to 4 weeks after that. So we are cognizant that that is a risk factor. And like I said, the perspective towards the disease has changed. Where it was supposed to be a simple viral pneumonia, we're saying now it causes an inflammatory response, which is seen in every organ of the body. We're now saying it causes thrombotic events, so it's also a procoagulant to a nature to some degree. So these are two new parameters to it, and it's possible that we as Indians do not have as much venous thrombosis as in different parts of the world.
Yeah,
But there
you
could
want
be
to
other
comment?
reasons as well.
Yeah, Nitin, you want to comment?
Yeah, Dr. Shahani, that was an interesting point which you said now. Is there genetic factors which also plays a crucial role as far as this this ACE2 receptors are the key factor which helps the virus to get in. So what do you think about that?
No, I think there is definitely, I'm not sure whether we call it purely genetic or should we call it that it's an ethnic variation.
Okay.
We as Indians have an ethnic variation in our genetic makeup which is occurring, or is it genetically that I've inherited from me? So I'm not sure whether the word should be genetic or ethnic, but there definitely is a different impact of the disease based on different ethnic groups in different parts of the world. And like I said, in the United States, they were finding that the Afro-Americans, the people were being more affected than the pure American white population. So there is definitely an ethnic differentiation in the way the virus behaves. I mean, I'm not sure whether we can call it genetic, but there is definitely, it'll need a lot more studies to do that before we can make a categorical statement. And I don't think we are yet ready to do that. We are now still battling the virus. We are still battling and looking for newer and newer treatment options. We are battling to find a vaccine because that really will be the ultimate, sort of paradigm change, which will take place if we get a vaccine by end of the year and we can actually do that to a large number of people.
Dr. Begins, nice to see you again after a long time. We had met last time in the seminar again.
Yeah, thank you for having me back.
Glad to see you. I'll ask the same question which we had discussed in the previous session. What is the impact of COVID on mental health as such across the globe? And if you have data on India, what's the impact, especially among children?
Yeah, I actually created a very short presentation, so I might just share my screen if that's okay.
Sure, fine, go ahead, yeah.
So you can see my screen?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so I've kind of broken this down into two sections. So obviously, children are affected as adults are affected by this pandemic. And I've kind of covered it from an angle of, what we can do to support children. And so the first thing is really providing safety and reassurance to children. And that, that really needs to come from parents, caregivers, teachers, to really sort of model, not to, because there's so much emotional contagion, teachers, or if they're stressed, then, children will pick up on that. So providing safety can come through, expressing emotions. So it's just a small kind of screenshot here of a feelings diary. So you can sit down with children and look at how they're feeling. Today I felt, one thing that made me happy was I'm worried about, and there's lots of different strategies, really encouraging children to talk about their emotions, to talk about their feelings, to express themselves and not keep it in. Routine. Children crave routine. That's why schools are set up like they are, with a very clear timetable, lunchtime breaks. And so it's really important to recreate that at home. So creating a timetable for having time for schoolwork, time for exercise, time for chores, time for play and creativity, and then time for screens as well, because we do know screens are important. Maybe not too much screen time, but children do still, they are digital natives and are brought up with screens, and some of their schoolwork is on screens. I can't stress enough the importance of exercise. And I've just got a screenshot here of, I don't know if you've heard about an online exercise guru in the UK called Joe Wicks. He ran PE with Joe every day during the pandemic for 13 weeks. And there were 70 million views of his PE lessons, and families were working out together. You can all access them. They're free online. But exercise is such a great antidote to stress for adults and for children. And it also helps in creating, endorphins, improving mood,
and preventing against catching infection as well. So really promote exercise, relaxation and mindfulness exercises. So this can be short diaphragmatic breathing exercises where you breathe in for 7 seconds and breathe out for 11 seconds. It really kind of activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps us all relax and get into a kind of rest and digest mode rather than fight flight. And those can be done kind of in the moment, or longer pranayama type exercises as well. And any distraction exercises that you can find. So painting pebbles, creating a den, anything like encouraging children to have lots of playtime. And then kindness is also a great antidote to stress. Kindness actually releases a hormone called oxytocin, which actually, improves mood, can also help with immunity as well. So encouraging children to carry out kind acts can really help with their well-being. And then back at school, it's important to sort of plan for transition. Transition can be kind of difficult for children, so they may have got used to being at home. So it's important to sort of sit down and plan with them. Well, what are you looking forward to about going back to school? What are you worried about? And what can you do to help you feel better? There is a concept by Tal Ben-Shahar called the stretch zone. And it's important to make children aware of this. And he's a psychologist from Harvard, and he says that when you're in your stretch zone, this is where things can be a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit tricky, but it's where we learn the most. In the comfort zone, things can get a bit boring. It's the comfort zone, it's very easy. And the stretch zone can sometimes feel a bit tricky. So any transition might fall into the stretch zone, but it's where we learn. We will make mistakes, but it's where we grow. So it's important to explain to children that, sometimes things might be tricky, but it's where we learn. And eventually the stretch zone becomes the comfort zone. And then if they get into the panic zone, we go back to some of those strategies that I spoke about in the last slide. Another very small exercise you can do is to jot down 3 things that have gone well. So they can reflect on lockdown about 3 things that have gone well, or 3 things that have gone well at the end of a week. And that can really help to rewire the negativity bias that I spoke about before that we all have, and really kind of create more sort of positive thinking. Did you want me to continue for young professionals, or?
Yeah, I think we're just running out of time, but I think that great exercise. I think in India also we need to learn how we can slowly, take children back to school without their stress levels increasing. That's very, basically good. And not only that, in India we have seen a lot of children also committing suicides because of such activities that have gone missing in their life. So I will conclude this session. It was great, Ms. Biggins, with this wonderful presentation that you had. I think it's relevant across the globe, but we need to specifically model it to India too, because our situation is slightly different. So I will conclude this session saying that, we'll just sum it up. As far as Dr. Suri said, that we are just not even near the peak. We are just somewhere in the middle. Dr. Tharun said that, we are still, there are a lot of puzzles to be solved. Hyperbaric, of course, is one of the studies that's going on. Yet we do not know the exact metrics of the virus, because we have yet to get a handle on it. And Ms. Biggins, of course, is a very remarkable person who has been trying to, deal with children, very, very important field, because we are always been focusing on patients, but we are forgetting a large section of children who are vulnerable to their formative age, and that's very, very important. So this session has been extremely wonderful. Unikrishnan, do you want to conclude with a few lines?
Yeah, see, most of the topics what we have touched upon is very relevant as far as this current situation is concerned. And as Dr. Suri said that the perception of general public as far as the healthcare professionals, when it comes to the critical stage of this pandemic, we are often confused with different kind of information pouring in. So we have to have a very clear mind as far as what are the facts and what are the real remedies available, and also to get hold of the information, the correct information, what is available through a good channel. So that will be helpful for most of the people, even for the general public, to face this pandemic in a proper and careful manner.
Yeah, that's right. The basic thing is to keep away from the fear pandemic. I think that's most important.
So before we conclude, sorry, I'm pitching in, Shankar sir. So
No
one
problem.
of the taking forward from our last discussions in a series of discussions we have been having for last 120 days, a couple of questions which I find very relevant to Dr. Tarun Sahni, and he has also touched upon it in the past, are related to like we have a learnings of more than 120 days in India, more than 11 lakh, 12 lakh, 13 lakh cases across the world. More, sorry, 1 crore 30 lakh cases across the world, more than 6 lakh, 7 lakh deaths, more than 1 lakh deaths in India. So with these learnings, you talked about the symptoms, the new symptoms which are coming in. So you talked about few very peculiar symptoms coming out for COVID patients. So can you throw some light in terms of our learnings with respect to the symptoms of COVID patients? Any difference we see the symptoms which were coming in the beginning and after 120 days and 150 days of global pandemic?
Thanks, Pradeep. I think what we've realized is that what we initially came in, which still forms the cornerstone of diagnosis, that is fever, cough, irritation in the throat. I mean, the large majority of patients will definitely have this, but a smaller percentage of patients are coming forward with COVID with none of the above symptoms, and the only thing they will have is, not being able to smell properly or be able to taste properly. So those are two symptoms which only recently came into the forefront. Also, there have been patients now with only diarrhea, and when you've tested them, they've been found to be with, COVID positive. So what we are learning is that there could be a change either in the morphology of the virus, and which is leading to a difference in the presentation of the virus. So we have now become even much and more, we become more alert. So every patient who comes in with a symptom which doesn't fit into the profile and doesn't fit into the clinical presentation, based on what we see in the patient, we do still think that COVID should be one of the diagnoses there. So there is a change, and like the 2-3 new symptoms are, not being able to smell, not being able to, taste, and even some gastric symptoms which would be there.
Thank you. Dr. Suri, one last question to you for this session. Sir, we are also introducing our campaign. We have a very interesting mask session after this, after Future of Healthcare. And we had distinguished people from like WHO country director to a lot of experts, mask experts, science of mask, history of mask. And we are launching a program called Mask is Must. That is coming out to be one of the key things, much important than a vaccine to prevent COVID going forward. When the whole country and the whole world has opened up, we cannot do further lockdowns. The economy has to come back. People have to go for work, and the markets are open. People are roaming here and there. So one of the key things which came and which prompted us also to, and which is one of the reasons why mask has become so important, is the oral the infection, the float of COVID in the air. That study also came that how airborne COVID infection is happening very fast. So what is your learning in the last 4 months of seeing such patients being infected? And what is your take on the mask, wearing mask? Sir, you have to unmute.
See, mask is one of the key element, the 4 things which we say, not going to the crowd, keeping a safe distance, at least 6 feet, hand hygiene, and the mask. So mask is definitely, I would say out of these 4, the most important component, because the major source of transmission of infection is the droplet infections. So when somebody coughs, sneezes, or when a person talks, he releases a kind of a droplets, in majority of cases, and most of these droplets do not go beyond 6 feet. But recently there are studies that there may be smaller particles, less than say 2 microns or around 1 micron, which may actually float in the air for some time, and particularly this becomes important in the closed spaces. If somebody sneezes or coughs in a lift or in a room which is not well ventilated, then these droplets can remain airborne for few hours, and somebody comes inside and may inhale. Now, these are the kinds of apprehension which have been raised, but we do not know that what is the viral load in these airborne infection, because they are very small particles, and the amount of virus in these small particles may not be enough for somebody to come after some time and suppose they inhale and develop this disease. So droplet infection still remains the most important way of transmission of this infection, and for that I think wearing mask serves two purposes. One, you don't spread infection to others, and then you don't get infection from the others. So it serves both purposes. And this would, and as we mentioned, that we are still far away from this endemic coming to an end. We are not even maybe close to middle, somewhere between 25 to 50%, and the vaccine is going to come not earlier than the beginning of the next year. So if we have to prevent the spread of infection and also to prevent our vulnerable population getting infection or serious form of infection for which hospitalization is required, I think wearing mask, particularly outside, once you go outside your home, would be the most important component.
Thank you, Dr. Suri. Thank you all panelists. And just few one is we are going live on Facebook, about 200 pages of Facebook from our Heal Foundation.in Facebook page, and viewed by thousands of viewers across, trying to convey this message and reach this message to the maximum people we can through this the summit, the second India Healthcare e-summit. Now we will start with our second the session on the future of healthcare. In the first India Healthcare Summit, we did a session on future of the world post-COVID. Now, in this session, we want to focus more on, because there's a lot of learnings in healthcare in the world and India in the last 5 months, and it will be very imperative and very useful to listen about to hear about those learnings from all the experts. And so I will give it to Ankit. Can we introduce the session and the panelists? Then I'll give it to Atul sir, who is our main moderator. Ankit, you're not audible.
Yeah, so thank you to all panelists for the second session. Now I'll introduce the third session, which is Future of Healthcare. The moderator for the session will be Mr. Atul Sharma. He is founder and MD Healthcare Business Solutions Private Limited. Over 30 years of senior leadership experience in pharmaceutical, hospitals, and consulting companies. Developed and executed India's first disease management program for Apollo Group of Hospitals, recipient of DMMA, that is Disease Management Association of America USA Award in 2003. Currently offers pharmaceutical, life science, and device companies a marketing capability development program, both for regulated and touted generic markets. Then we have with us Mr. Vimal Singh, clairvoyant Lucknow. He's a Times of India columnist, a political analyst, predictor, and a media personality. He's also a life coach and career consultant. Then we have with us Dr. Sonia Lal Gupta, MD Metro Group of Hospitals. She is a US-based certified neurologist with fellowships in headache medicine and vascular neurology. She is the joint MD of Metro Group of Hospitals and MD of Metro College of Health Sciences and Research. She is also the co-founder of Voice of Health, a credible platform for medical and healthcare advice. She was awarded Neurologist of the Year award at the India Health and Wellness Summit held in New Delhi in December 2014 for her achievements and as the upcoming young achiever in the field of neurology. Then we have with us Mr. Anand Srivastava, the chairman of Mirchi Ayurveda. Mr. Anand Srivastava, initiated into the science of transcendental meditation by His Holiness Maharishi Mahesh Yogi Ji at the young age of 7. He joined Maharishi's international TM movement, working under his guidance for establishing TM teacher training academies. Recognizing his demonstrated strength of established institution, he has designated to lead the unfoldment of Maharishi Ayurveda program globally with the guidance of celebrated and renowned Ayurvedacharyas. Mr. Srivastava focused on adopting the benefits of modern science and technology that ensure Ayurveda's relevance in today's time too. Not only this, he has also been actively involved in training doctors, Vaidyas, and health professionals in the science and practice of Ayurveda. And we have with us Dr. Sushil Kumar Jain, he is General Surgeon, Apollo Hospitals. Dr. Jan is one of the best general surgeons in New Delhi. Dr. Sushil is well renowned for his consistent performance, par excellence, with highest number of successful surgeries in his department per annum. Having acquiring his skills and basic practicing skills in Assam, Dr. Jan's integral Northeast Connect has always been an indispensable part of his life, affectionately referred to as Ambassador of People of Assam. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Vivek Srivastava. He is CEO of Healthcare at Home. Mr. Vivek Srivastava has won the prestigious Entrepreneur of the Year award for healthcare services in 2018 as the first home healthcare solution provider to win an award of this stature. Vivek brings home healthcare under the spotlight as an integrated part of India's healthcare industry. Vivek has not just led healthcare at home to become the leading player of the home healthcare industry in India, but he has also pioneered effort to bring the regulation and standardization of home healthcare industry. Over to you, Atul sir.
Hi, good evening, everybody. First of all, I think the 2020, we have experienced something like which has been unprecedented. I think the life of the people, the lifestyle of the people, and when it comes to medical practice, I think everything has gone for a change. And I think we want to extend my special thanks to Swadeep for organizing this meeting to understand that what is going to be the overall change in terms of patient-physician relationship, patient-physician patient management, the long-term patient care. So this is what we need to understand, what exactly is going to be the post-COVID impact on the overall management of patients and medical services in India. So the first question, I think I'll ask to practicing surgeon like Dr. Sushil Jain and Dr. Sonia Lal in terms to understand that how do you feel that this shift is going to happen in the real time patient-physician relationship, short-term or say that emergency patient management to the long-term patient management.
Yeah.
So we can start, maybe Dr. Sushil can give and then followed by Sonia. Yeah, Dr. Sushil.
First of all, doctors have become more sensitive and their responsibility has increased during this pandemic. Our aim remains the same, Sarve Santu Niramaya. Yes, I agree because of the fear prevailing amongst the doctors as well amongst the population, the patients. We are unable to pat their back. That is lacking. But the patient care is going to come to the same thing again. Now, of course, we are digitally connected with the patient with online consultations. The fear is gradually going. Now we are performing surgery regularly again, which we had stopped. And day by day, we are learning the techniques of safety, which we are applying in the operation theaters and the hospitals. And in long run, I think of maintaining the common precautions, we will be able to come to the routine practice.
So over to Dr. Sonia.
Firstly, thank you for having me over here. It's such an honor to be here with the team panel. Thank you, Mr. Sudeep Srivastava, for organizing this. I think these kind of platforms are very important to help spread awareness. So right now, when it comes to our pandemic, education and awareness is the only way we can get to people on focusing on prevention and what's happening lately. So I think this is such an important topic because the patient-doctor dynamic has completely changed in a way. We always believed in that human touch, and now suddenly even that human touch, when a patient is in front of you, you are examining with your mask on, you can't see your expression, you can't see that emotion of a patient, the patient can't see the doctor. So I think first and foremost, if you think from a point of view of a doctor-patient relationship, I think that what used to be it'll never be the same again, at least for some time. Over time we will adapt to it in a different way, and that emotionality and that bond will still we'll be able to get that back. But I think that's first and foremost that touch that we learned, to how to speak to a patient and how to read the expressions. Like in neurology, a lot of time, the moment the patient enters, half of our exam is done just observing how the patient is entering, how the face looks like. Now the face has a mask. So you have to tell the patient to remove the mask to even see if it's equal or not. Like just a small example, right? So that is one aspect of it. I think the other aspect that COVID really highlighted was, the loneliness factor. I think this was the first time that it hit people that how death can be lonely in India, especially when people die. I mean, people die from various diseases, but you always have your family around you in your last moments. And this particular pandemic hit home where people were not with their family members, and doctors and healthcare staff, whether it was nurses, paramedical techs, ward boys, anybody, they became the family for the patient. When they're in that hospital for 14 days, it's actually the healthcare staff that becomes your first family, and not, and they are the ones who actually are with you at all times. So I think that dynamic has also changed. Apart from that, I think the biggest, in a way, COVID has been, the worst thing that can happen to us. But one thing I feel it has really brought one positive change is acceptance of telemedicine. India being a huge country, rural areas hardly have accessibility to good specialist doctors. And we all know that. In urban cities where we all live in metropolitan towns, we know that, yes, we can go to a good doctor at any time. But to have that availability at the touch of a button anywhere, I think that's going to be the next goal. And I think that's where healthcare will change. It gives everybody, the government, the public, and the private sector, an opportunity to look at getting healthcare to every single part of India, where at least specialist care in terms of initial consultations are available. So people can at least get that advice and then plan to travel and, get that advice and take all the precautions they need to. So I think that is definitely going to be one major change in that doctor-patient relationship that will change going forward post-COVID era.
So, Atul sir, can I ask a question from
Sure, please.
in continuation to this? Can I come to Sonia? Sonia, I'll come back to you with a question on how hospitals are changing in terms of so no touch and all those things. Yeah. So, can I come to Vivek? You have been running so many programs with pharma companies, and now currently, just recently, you got a home isolation program of Delhi government, which you're working, where there is a great role of telemedicine, teleconsultation, and overall patient services, what you're doing overall. So what do you see in terms of the change, in terms of acceptance by your clients, the pharma companies, in terms of acceptance by the people at large? And also throw some light on home isolation, its role, because this home isolation management role has gone up in COVID tremendously, and people suddenly have realized that a lot of things actually which you were trying to tell for last 10 years, a lot of things in healthcare can be managed at home, in home healthcare. Vivek, your take on that.
So thank you, Sudeep. So there has been a dramatic change, I would say, in the acceptance of doing things at home. In fact, I had seen a Deloitte study, which was a consumer survey which people did, and basically, across the spectrum of care, in patient care, 72% of the patients who were surveyed preferred post-procedure care at home. 74% preferred home collection, 80% preferred, preferred home consultation, and so on. So there is a huge shift in the way people think, and this is not only true with people. I'm getting every day. I get phone calls. ये घर पे कर सकते हो क्या? Today morning, in fact, one of your team members only called up, Sudeep, and asked, can you do echo at home and so on. So while you could not do this, but there are many things which were not asked earlier, and now they are being asked that can you do this at home? Earlier, no one asked this question. In fact, we did a survey with oncologists, and 50% plus were now willing to look at doing chemotherapy at home, right? So there has been a dramatic shift in the way doctors think, in the way people, individuals think. in the way the government is thinking. Think of the government, rolling out these programs, massive scale programs like the Delhi government, managing patients at home. And insurance, one of the big payers is insurance. Insurance covers all our services related to COVID. Some of them cashless, some of them with some restrictions, but there is a huge push from the insurance itself, with IRDA also pushing it, that you should cover these things at home. So there is a big shift in the way people are thinking. In terms of the home isolation question you asked for, Sudeep, you are aware that we launched the first home isolation program of the country. We are running it for all Fortis hospitals across the country. Insurances like ICICI Lombard cover it on a cashless basis. And we are running the program for Delhi government as well, where we have handled, about 18,000 patients till now. And it's just started, right? So there is a lot of acceptance of people that diseases can be managed at home. And same is the case with with the pharma companies, where we were doing some physical touch programs, are now moving into a lot of digital programs where we are handling and managing patients across disease segments, gut diseases to neurosciences, epilepsy, and so on and so forth, all these being managed through digital programs. And almost all our programs which had physical touch point are now having digital disease management. So it's not only COVID disease management, but other disease management as well, which will pick up as we move forward.
So we in the morning we had in the first session we had a beautiful talk with Anand sir, Anand Srivastaji, and the topic was our samvad was the role of spirituality. अध्यात्म का क्या रोल है पैंडेमिक जैसे कोविड जैसे पैंडेमिक सिचुएशन के लिए, एंड क्या अध्यात्म रामबाण है? जब राम जन्मभूमि का शिलान्यास कल हुआ है तो हम रामबाण की भी बात कर रहे हैं, आध्यात्म एक रामबाण हो सकता है। तो आनंद सर ने बोला आयुर्वेदा भी एक रामबाण है। तो अतुल सर, योर क्वेश्चंस फॉर आनंद श्रीवास्तव।
So Anandji, I think there has been a lot of discussion around the prevention and then withholding the very good immunity of the patient and overall philosophy of Ayurveda. What is your take on to that impact of COVID on overall role of Ayurveda in India?
Yes, thank you. Actually, when we look at the whole situation, whole scenario of COVID era, we can see that COVID has actually taught us several lessons. And one of the very important lesson is that one should not continue living with comorbid conditions. It has been quite common for people कि सुबह गोली ले ली डायबिटीज की, शाम को एक ले ली और सोचा कि हम बिल्कुल ठीक है, या ब्लड प्रेशर की गोली ले ली, ओ बस छोटी सी गोली तो लेनी है, आप तो बिल्कुल परफेक्ट है हेल्थ वाइज। तो ये चीजें अब नहीं चलेंगी, बिकॉज what we have learned from the available data, that small number, maybe around 5% is the world average, who could not make it or who could not get through the COVID infection. Most of the people were among those who were having some comorbid conditions. So what I would say that Ayurveda is going to give that knowledge to people, to whole world, that change which can be brought is with the knowledge of Ayurveda, that you have to get rid of comorbid conditions. Now, many doctors, present here, may say that, oh, well, whole science is saying that this disease or this disease cannot be, is incurable. For instance, diabetes is completely incurable and we have to live with it. But if we look at the whole thing little deeply, what we find that we don't treat diabetes, we simply treat high blood sugar, which is only a symptom of diabetes. So while treating the symptom, we cannot say we are treating the disease. The root cause of disease of diabetes may be something different than just high blood sugar. High blood sugar is the result of the disease coming up. So we have to actually go deep into the causative factors and take care of those causative factors so that we really get rid of such conditions. And because any such treatment even impacts upon our immunity. So we have to make sure, and Ayurveda provides this. Now, I am getting a lot of questions from people that, oh, Ayurveda is a 5,000-year-old knowledge, and how it is relevant today. And the most modern science is not able to find the answer of this virus, COVID-19. My answer has been that Ayurveda, the basis of Ayurveda is not disease, or Ayurvedic treatment is not disease oriented, it is person oriented. So what Ayurveda does, they provide the medicines which actually re-enliven the intelligence of the organ and help the physiology to come into balance, which is the basis of health. In Ayurveda, balance and bliss has been defined as the basis of health. So this is how Ayurveda treats the problem, and this is going to be the situation in future. Today, we are looking for the vaccine or some treatment or some medicine for COVID-19. We find scientists will come up with the result after a few months or so. But what will happen if some other virus props up and with some entirely different characteristics? Again, we'll have to go for this situation. Several lakh people will die, and then we'll come up with a vaccine, fine. But can we not live in a situation which is, you can say, perfect health or a good health with a good level of immunity? And this is the contribution going to be from Ayurveda.
Thank you, sir. So we have very interesting panelist, Mr. Vimal Singh. He is known as clairvoyant, termed as one of the big prediction person, though he belongs to Lucknow. Mr. Mr. Singh, are you there? Can you unmute? Chavi, can you call Mr. Vimal Singh to just come
Yes,
in?
I'll just do
He's
that.
logged in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you do that? Yeah. So my question to Sonia would be, Dr. Sonia, what do you think in future of healthcare, the hospitals are the most important part of healthcare delivery? So what do you think in terms of the new technologies, new infrastructure of hospitals, new way of working in the hospitals? You run such a huge chain of hospitals. So what is your say on that?
I think what this is highlighted is it has brought about our weaknesses also, and as well as our strengths. I think this COVID pandemic has brought two things together. But going forward, first and foremost, I think India will have to focus on a public-private partnership of sorts in a way where we can provide healthcare at affordable rates, but at the same time, good healthcare is right. So everybody has good affordable healthcare. So I think going forward, as private healthcare sectors, again, the goal, I think I completely agree. Firstly, with Anandji, that the only way forward is preventive. We have to eventually start focusing more on prevention more than anything else. Basically, I think going forward for hospitals is going to be looking in terms of technology. We are looking in terms of adding more infrastructure in terms of telemedicine, then adding more accessibility, and I think more public-private partnerships to get more affordability into play. apart from focusing on preventive healthcare programs. I think it's
So
going to be
you see a major change happening in healthcare delivery because of COVID.
Absolutely. I think absolutely. I think the whole way of how healthcare is being practiced is going to change. I think people are going to wake up that it's not only COVID, but they have to focus on other infections as well. I mean, TB kills millions every year. We get tuberculosis, just because we have treatment for it. But I think we have to start focusing on the preventive as well. And within the hospital, how those sanitization practices now that we have started due to COVID, they have to be maintained going forward as well. So I think those are going to be the changes that we slowly and steadily will start noticing in healthcare.
Thank you, thank you. As we go on to our next session of masks, we are getting our experts on panel. My last question to Dr. Sushil Jain, sir, on the lighter side, what is the change in the lives of doctors because of COVID? I've seen you are a doctor working 24 hours, helping hundreds of patients on a personal basis, on a daily basis. What is the lifestyle? And you didn't have time for the family. Obviously, with a lot of doctors, it is true.
I speak in positive way, if you think positive, I will say most of the doctors were busy doctors. There are some data also, nearly 60 to 70% doctors who never could have a quality time with the family. They could never master their hobbies. They could never take their medicines in time. They could never have prayer in time. Now all of them have got time to all this. No one in Apollo knew that I'm a qualified musician, as I discussed with you yesterday, sir. And now everybody is enjoying my music and my organization. I've spent 24 hours in Apollo, years in Apollo Hospital. So I think if you think in a positive way, we are well connected with our family, we are digitally connected with our colleagues. So I would say this is a positive thing amongst all the negativity.
Thank you. Atulji, what is your closing remark on this session?
So my closing remark, I think it is a growing challenge for healthcare entire system, both public and private, in terms of taking up the disease and multiple disease burden. When technology is coming into picture, the expectation of healthcare at home is increasing, which is unprecedented kind of a thing. I think there has been a tremendous positive things in terms of adoption to technology, adoption to access to healthcare at home. And people are prepared in terms of understanding what is the prevention to any kind of diseases like this. I think the future what we see is a challenge to constantly train ourselves. And I think there would be need for more number of HCPs to able to address the kind of disease burden we have in our country. And I want to thank each one of the panelists for their fabulous contribution and then insights. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Swadeep, you are on mute.
I will request all the panelists to stay because we have designed a beautiful session on mass, science of mass, linking ancient wisdom with modern science. We have the moderator, Mr. Rajiv Mehrotra ji, Padma Shri Rajiv Mehrotra ji. We have top public health experts of the country, Professor K. Srinath Reddy, doesn't need any introduction, Dr. Chandrakant Pandav, and Professor Vij from the word from Sheetal Vij from ma'am from World Peace University on speaking on various aspects of mass. I'll request. Thank you so much again. Just few announcements. Again, thank you all the panelists. We are live on Facebook on about about more than 150 pages on Facebook, reaching out to thousands of people through our Facebook live page at healfoundation.in and trying to reach to as many people across the country for this regular education and awareness and behavior change on COVID. And so with this, we end this session. I'll ask Dr. Ankit to please start the introduction of the next session so that we don't get late further. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone. So before I introduce the panelists for the next session, I'll just start with a video to spread awareness around the mask.
कमला के कानों पर कानों पर, मिश्रा के कानों पर, छुटभैया के और बाहुबली के कानों पर, रायपुर के रोमियो के, जबलपुर की जूलियट के, अड़ोसी पड़ोसी के, मामा मौसी के, चाची के, ताई के, भतीजी और भाई के, नाई के, हलवाई के, 1, 2 और 2.5 के, सबके कानों पर एक जिम्मेदारी है। तो जब जब घर से बाहर जा रहे हैं उसे बखूबी निभा रहे हैं। फिर आप मास्क क्यों नहीं लगा रहे? जनहित में जारी कानों पे जिम्मेदारी।
This was just a brief about like how important it is to wear the mask. And with that, I'd like to introduce our next session. The next session, the science of mask, linking ancient wisdom with modern science. With the blessing of Shri M. Padma Bhushan awardee, he was supposed to join the session but could not because of some urgent schedule. So in this session, we have with us Dr. Poonam Khetrapal, Regional Director, WHO CRO, New Delhi. Dr. Poonam Khetrapal Singh, an Indian national, became the first woman to assure the office of WHO Regional Director of Southeast Asia on 1st February 2014. In September 2018, member states unanimously nominated Dr. Khetrapal Singh for a second 5-year term as Regional Director. Prior to Dr. Khetrapal Singh's service as Regional Director of the WHO Southeast Asia region for over 2 decades, she was a civil servant in India as a member of an Indian Administrative Services. This included roles as both Joint Secretary and Secretary of Health in the state of Punjab, which has a population of 27 million and a health budget of USD 350 million. Then we have with us Dr. Chandrakant S. Pandav. He is president of ICC, IDD, and leading global public health expert. He is the founder of member and regional coordinator for South Asia of International Council of Control of Iodine Deficiency Disorder since 1985. Dr. Pandav was former president of Indian Association of Preventive and Social Medicine for year 2007 and 8. He has been working in the area of iodine deficiency disorder, micronutrients, health system research, health economics, health policy, health program evaluation, PPP, and human rights issues. Then we have with us Professor K. Srinath Reddy, Padma Bhushan awardee, President, Public Health Foundation India. Professor Reddy is presently President of Public Health Foundation of India and formerly headed the Department of Cardiology at All India Institute of Medical Sciences. He was appointed as the first Bernard Lown Visiting Professor of Cardiovascular Health in Harvard School of Public Health in 2019 and 13. He has served on many WHO expert panels and has been president of the World Heart Federation 2013-14. He chaired the core advisory group of health and human rights for the National Human Rights Commission of India for several years and was member of the first National Science and Engineering Research Board of Government of India. Shri Rajiv Sethi, Padma Bhushan awardee, Indian designer, scenographer, and art curator. Shri Rajiv Sethi was born in Delhi to freedom fighter parents. His mother, Krishna Sethi, was a member of Delhi's first Legislative Assembly, and his father, Shri Kishori Lal Sethi, was a businessman and a poet. Shri Sethi spent his formative years in Paris, where he first went to study graphic art on a scholarship. Thereafter, he trained under painter and printmaker Stanley William Hatley at his studio. At age 17, he has mentored by American designer Ray and Charles Eames. Finally, he got a chance to work at studio of French designer Perry Cardin. Meanwhile, in 1960, he designed Delhi's first discotheque cellar at Regal Building, Connaught Place. He is curator and founder chairman of the Asian Heritage Foundation. He is also part of INPACH, constituted the first governing council. Mr. Pushpesh Pant, Padma Shri awardee. Mr. Pushpesh Pant is a noted Indian academic, food critic, and historian. He retired as a professor of international relations from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. He is one of the India's leading experts on international relations as well as the Indian cuisines, and a columnist, has written a number of major publications like Forbes. His book, India, the Cookbook, was named as the New York Times as one of the best cookbooks of the year. He has also featured in an interview in the Australian. The Government of India awarded him the Padma Shri in 2016. Professor Pant has published widely on travel and tourism with over a dozen books to his credit. Mr. Rajiv Mehrotra, Mr. Mehrotra is Indian writer, television producer, director, documentary filmmaker, personal student of Dalai Lama, for whom he manages as trustee, secretary, and foundation for Universal Responsibility. He is best known as the former acclaimed host of the India's longest-running talk show on public television, In Conversation. As a documentary filmmaker, producer, and commissioning editor, his 650 film has won 50 national awards from the President of India and more than 285 national and international awards. Mr. Swadeep Srivastava, founder Heal Foundation. Dr. Srivastava has an experience of 20 years in the healthcare sector. He has his finger on the pulse of Indian healthcare system. He considers bringing health media in the front line of the media industry and one of the key highlights of his career. Professor Sheetal Vij, Premium Faculty Member, Birthplace University, Pune. She teaches in the Department of Computer Engineering, MEER, MIT for 20 years, contributed in various subjects like bioinformatics, operating system, advanced computer architecture, system programming, FPL1, 8086 systems, and many more. Over to you, Swadeep, sir.
Yeah, so I would now give it over to Shri Rajiv Mehrotra ji, the moderator of this session, sir. Sir, can you take over now, sir? And we can start the session with a sequence of Professor Srinath Reddy speaking first, sir. Then we can have Dr. Pandav, then Mrs. Vij, then other speakers will join in due course of time. Sir, please, over to you, sir. So you have to unmute. So you have to unmute. You are still on mute, Manotra sir.
Okay.
Yeah, now you're there.
Can you hear me now? Great. Well, I'm so deeply honored and privileged to be here. I didn't recognize myself in many facets of that introduction because it was about like 20 years ago that it was probably the longest running talk show. I think there are lots of people who have done very sort of, how do I put it, influential, popular interview programs since then. So that's a bit dated. You know, I'm really excited that we're discussing masks because I've been rather disturbed. I was, you know, watching the ceremony around the Ram Temple yesterday, and there was a very, very large number of people who had gathered together, who had the confidence and the faith that Lord Ram would protect them, and there was no need for a mask. And I think the whole idea and the history of the mask actually goes back to ritual, it goes back to theater, it goes back to performance, and has been closely related with the sacred. And I think that in today's day and age, when the mask was so desperately needed, and I was also disappointed, and this is being not being political, that when Mr. Amit Shah went into hospital with the COVID virus, there was a lot of footage in television, and if it had been a lesser human being, it would have had a large circle and an arrow pointing to it, that the Home Minister wasn't wearing a mask when on Sunday evening he attended a major function, I think, organized by ICCR. And you had numerous people who he was with, as at Ram Mandir, who had their mask below their noses. They were wearing it wrong. So I think the first thing that comes across is and I was listening to a bit of the earlier discussion, is that the ambiguity in the messaging that is emanating on the one hand from experts, whether it is physical distancing, phrase I prefer to social distancing, or the use of masks. So in terms of the Aam Aadmi, you know, in terms of the message that sort of sinks in is not merely the promotional message that you showed, but what we see people of eminence and substance doing. And so I think that is really the, you know, the real challenge of the cause is that in what ways we can present and reaffirm and keep reaffirming these so that it becomes a reflexive response. And I think that is a major challenge. And we have a very distinguished panel, and so it's not for me to take up any more time, but to invite my sort of an old friend who I also admire greatly, Professor Reddy. So it's over to you, sir. No, I think you'll need, yeah. You're more savvy at this than I am.
Thank you, Rajiv. And I've been asked to
speak about the science and public health basis for advising masks. And since you're of Lord Ram, one of the things that Lord Ram was most reputed for was obedience and the rule of law. And therefore, when regulations are made, I think everybody must obey. And therefore, the law related to masks also becomes absolutely imperative. And the reason is very clear. The COVID virus enters our body through the nose, the mouth, and the eyes. And from the eyes, of course, there is a connection to the nose. This is a respiratory virus which enters through these three gateways or portals and then spreads through the entire respiratory tract into the lungs. And from there, it also enters the blood vessels and can enter the rest of the body. But since the points of entry are essentially the nose and the mouth, and of course also the eyes, we need to protect as much of the face as possible from the entry of the virus. And the dose matters as well. If we breathe quietly, we discharge about 20 virus particles. If we speak reasonably softly, then we discharge about 200 virus particles. It takes about 1,000 virus particles at least to cause the infection. And if we speak loudly or sing loudly or shout in a closed indoor space, likely to be discharging many more virus particles. Or if we exercise and then start deep breathing and panting, then also we are likely to discharge more virus particles. But if we cough or sneeze, then we are likely to discharge more than 200 million virus particles. And that's going to be quite a dose in terms of infection. Now, we also recognize that because not only symptomatic people are discharging the virus, but also people who are pre-symptomatic, that is a few days before they actually manifest their clinical symptoms, they also can actually discharge the virus. And now we also learn from a number of studies, including antibody tests, that many people who are infected are asymptomatic, and there is some evidence to show that they too can discharge the virus and then can infect others. And therefore, the need to protect our face with a mask is absolutely imperative. If we actually wear the mask well, then we can prevent the entry of the virus. And we also, if unknown to us, are carrying the virus in an asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic manner, we will not infect others as well. And of course, as is well known, there are three types of masks which are generally advertised and seen. One is the surgical mask, which is useful in many cases, but the N95 mask filters 95% of the particles, and that's supposed to be the most effective and is prescribed under hospital conditions. And then there are, of course, the cloth masks or the ordinary masks, which are advised. And certainly a thick double-layered cloth mask is also quite effective. And wearing a mask with a valve is not particularly helpful for others because we may be protected, but we'll be discharging our air through the valve, and therefore we could potentially infect others if we are infected. But wearing that kind of a face protection is absolutely imperative. And we also recognize that while physical distancing of about 2 is absolutely important, about 6 yards, it is very difficult under crowded conditions to maintain that physical distancing, whether it is in a crowded marketplace or in a public transport. Therefore, wearing the mask becomes absolutely important. But so far, I've been talking only about droplet infection. Now we know that particularly in indoor spaces where people gather, like, for example, whether it's offices or restaurants or movie halls or music halls or bars, people can actually discharge a fair amount of viruses which hang around as clouds, virus clouds, and they can hang around for several hours, at least 3 hours or probably more. Therefore, the idea of wearing masks even indoor, particularly in a crowded environment, to escape the effects of this aerosol, which forms virus clouds, is also an important element. We must gauge what our risk is based upon the distance at which we are from others, the time of exposure, is it brief or long, is there air flowing or not, is there indoor or outdoor, with a good air current outside or no air current or a good air circulation inside, and how crowded the place is. All these are important. But since we cannot gauge all of this in our day-to-day work, and we may encounter unexpected events in which we have to enter a crowd, or we face a person who may be carrying the virus and may come close to us and suddenly start coughing, it is absolutely important for us to wear the mask, both to protect ourselves as well as others. If we can also protect our eyes with spectacles or face shields, that's good. But the minimum thing that we must do is to wear the mask. Now, people say, well, we can't have physical distancing. It's not always possible. True, but it has been shown that if we practice wearing masks and hand washing, at least 60% of the risk is cut off. And if you can also ensure that your eyes are protected, then there is additional protection. Therefore, wearing the mask is important. Some people say, oh, wearing the mask is going to cause problems because I'll be breathing my carbon dioxide or impure air and I'll get sick. That's not true at all, because doctors wear it most of the time in the theaters where they're operating, whether they're delivering a baby or performing a surgical operation for years together. Nothing happens to them. The Jain Munis go around with masks, nothing happens to them. So this feeling that a mask is going to cause harm to you is absolutely incorrect if you wear it the right way. And the right way means your nose must be covered, not hanging below your nose or hanging around your neck. Therefore, it's absolutely essential that we recognize that there is a science behind it, that much of the scientific knowledge has grown over the last 4 to 6 months, that whether it is outdoor in the open street or indoor in a closed hall where we can get exposed to droplets or to aerosols, we must wear the mask to protect ourselves. It is not absolutely essential if you are indoor with your own family with whom you are in constant touch. But if one of them is unwell and is on home isolation, as is now being advised for mild cases, then not only that person, but you should also wear a mask if you're coming into contact with that person. So the mask at this point in time is absolutely critical and important. And since Rajiv started off with Lord Sri Ram, let me say that the mask in this case is Sri Rama Raksha. Thank you.
Mr. Mehrotra, you're on mute, please. Sir, you have to unmute.
Okay, yep. A quick question, because I suspect you're going to leave us soon. I'm not sure why I suspect that, but the question really is that, in using masks, there is a tendency to, what is the, how long is a particular mask useful? Does washing solve the problem? Can an N95 surgical mask be washed? Because to what degree is the maintenance of the mask important?
Well, it's been suggested that surgical masks should be discarded, but even they can be cleaned and washed. Cloth masks can certainly be cleaned. And if you have a couple of them with you, then when one you're using, the other can be washed. But N95 masks are also now, some of them are reusable and they're being made from reusable materials. But it's better for you to carry at least 2 or 3 masks so that you can always wash one while the other is being used. That's the important element.
Thank you. I will move to Dr. Pandav, and who's going to sort of talk to us about ancient wisdom in particular, and how that has a bearing on masks.
So you have to unmute.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. With the sunset years, I celebrate my evenings looking after 2 columns in my diary. First is called gratitude. The second is called forgiveness. Gratitude, I would like to express my colleagues, the physicians, the nurses, the sanitary workers, the drivers, the lawmakers, for their conscious decision to go into the valley of death. So I must express my gratitude to them for what they are doing as Corona warriors to save all of us. at hospital level and at the community level. So gratitude to them. And prayers for their family, for their well-being. I'm not aware, Dr. Srinath might be more aware of this, whether the government of India has any scheme to compensate for any loss that happens or any disability that is caused as a result of getting treatment to the corona patients. I'm not aware at least. Number three, I think there are many pandemics going on in India. First is the pandemic of corona, and my sincere, honest, scientific opinion is that we gave a very warm welcome, and I think our response has been very exaggerated response. This is the 20th pandemic. India is not, the world is not unfamiliar with pandemics. 20th pandemic. At least I fail to understand, as a humble public health specialist and a scientist, as to why it got such a warm welcome. And it's continued to have such a warm welcome. So that's the first pandemic. Second pandemic is pandemic of over-information. That is continuing. 120 days is continuing. 90% of the space in media, be it electronic or print, is taken by corona virus, as if the other part of the exist doesn't exist. बाकी जो बचा हुआ है वो रो रहा है. The third is pandemic of misinformation, disinformation, distorted information, incomplete information, selective information. When you ask a pointed question to the people involved in managing COVID-19, you never get a straight answer. So, Dr. Reddy, we never get a straight arrow from Ram's bow to kill the evil ones. Never a straight answer. Then there is a pandemic of fear. To me, that is the biggest pandemic. The pandemic of fear is more serious than the disease. And we are all caught in fire, or I would say tsunami of pandemic of fear. As Srinath Reddy has mentioned, very simple precautions that you need to take. It's not something that one has to be worried. In fact, death is an exception in coronavirus. Recovery is a rule. Then there is a pandemic of misery. We are only focused on one side of the equation. What about the other side of the equation? In the entire corona episode, the hospitals were closed. What happens to the people with meeting with road traffic accident, with heart attacks? What happens to them with diabetes, or an immunosuppressor, or on chemotherapy? Total, only focus on one side of the equation. Then we have the pandemic of migrants. I also take a very strong exception to the use of the word migrants. The Indian economy is based on them, and we call them migrants. ये तो मेरे भारतवासी, और आप उनको प्रवासी बुला रहे हैं. So that's a pandemic of migrants. And recently, there is a pandemic of webinars, and ours is such an example of pandemic of webinars. Just before the program, my esteemed friend, Swadeep Srivastava, asked me, "You're looking very tired." I said, "Yes, I'm entering a new phase of pandemic of corona fatigue syndrome. Pandemic of corona fatigue syndrome." So that's my second point I wanted to make. The third point is the basic fundamentals of preventive medicines are not, I repeat, are not being practiced. There are three types of prevention: primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. Primary prevention has two components: health promotion and specific protection. The secondary has one component: early diagnosis and treatment. And this third, tertiary, has two components: disability limitation and rehabilitation. When you look at the corona situation globally, where is the attention being focused on? Where is the attention being focused on? On early diagnosis and treatment. What happens to the earlier two? Of course, there are efforts of making vaccine as a specific protection measure, but primary health promotion, I think, almost negligible. The other day, I went to the car market, and it was an extremely ideal situation how to make sure that coronavirus never leaves the soil of India. No mask below the nose, physical distance, as Professor Srinath Reddy mentioned, out of question. So it was an ideal condition to make sure that coronavirus stays in the pandemic form forever with us. So we need to take this very seriously. The next point I want to make is that we're talking of Sri Ram Janmabhoomi Shilaras. I think we are barking at the wrong tree. Mata Sita we found in Sri Lanka. We are looking for Sita in China. Barking at the wrong tree. If you want to really address this problem with abundant common sense and organized way, the answer is very simple. I consider our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi as a public health practitioner of the century. 2014, he started Swachh Bharat Mission. 2018, he introduced National Nutrition Mission. And then we have Ayushman Bharat. So he had anticipated these events and prepared us well before that. The two aspects of leave aside pandemic of corona or any infection are two things. One is the internal resilience, second is the external protection. External protection has three dimensions: the mask, or major focus on the mask. The second is about the physical space distancing. I repeat again, I'm very, very much against the word social distancing. It's most asocial, antisocial, derogatory, harsh word, especially in the Indian context. And insensitive. It means in Indian context, you're untouchable. So we are all untouchable today. Coronavirus has taught a lesson that every one of us is untouchable. The second is the washroom hygiene. Hand washing has been an ancient practice, and we had forgotten all these years. So this is the external protective measures. Let me focus my attention on the internal resilience. Most important is Ayurveda. There are different preparations. Ayurveda is the science of health. What Dr. Srinath Reddy and I studied at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences was science of disease. We go back to Ayurveda, go back to our ancient practices. Number two, dance therapy. It's known that when you dance, endorphins and hormones secrete, and there is a sense of well-being. Number three, the three M's. My friend Raju Mehrotra, your initials. One is mantra jap. No matter which religion you belong, have the mantra jap. Second M is the meditation. It helps to make your mind still and avoid many mental health problems. The third M is the music. Where medicine fails, music helps. And I'm very happy to announce that I am one of the founder members of Indian Music Therapy Association. That's the triple M. Then we come to the sunlight. We focus attention only on the sunlight, but not on the sunlight. Vitamin D deficiency is so common that we have forgotten to spend half an hour between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. in the sunlight. Then comes the yoga, all the 4 breathing practices, which have been very much part. When they become yoga, nobody paid attention. When it becomes yoga, then everybody starts paying attention to it. And again, I'm grateful to our Honorable Prime Minister for introducing 21st June as the World Yoga Day. So I think the story is we are barking at the wrong tree. And most important, I would like to make a statement at this stage. We do not need any vaccine. We do not need any vaccine for corona. All that you have to do is 3 simple things. Take tap water, not the RO water. Take steam inhalation 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, evening. Do a mantra japa or listen to music. That is all the vaccine you require, along with the practice of internal resilience and external protective measures. Thank you very much. Pranam.
Mr. Mehrotra, please unmute. Sir, please unmute.
Used to this. I have to get used to unmuting. Well, thank you, Dr. Pranav. That was sort of a rather a very bold, radical alternative that we do not need a vaccine. I think that the great challenge, and since I try to be in the communication business, is that as a consumer of communication related to the coronavirus, I am so often confused. As a non-specialist, I get so many conflicting pieces of advice, of recommendations, of what the truth is, whether it is a statistic of the prevalence. At one point, plasma therapy is being promoted to us. Today, a newspaper item tells us that it has no impact or little impact on mortality. We are getting contradictory signals as a community, as the consumers of information, as people who are trying to cope with the coronavirus. We have a set of experts here. At some point, someone has to evolve a consensus and present that consensus as is best possible. This is much too complex for a average uninitiated citizen to be able to arrive at his own decisions and choices. It is a huge challenge. We have no clue as to what the truth is, what the reality is, and what works and doesn't work. And I don't know how this is going to happen, but I would really like to pose this question, to this panel. And if we don't achieve this, so it is not just that the person doesn't want to wear a mask or is negligent or doesn't have respect for other people. And that's why I mentioned the example that if he is seeing the pinnacle of India's establishment presenting themselves in the public domain without a mask, that's sending out a signal. No matter how much we argue that this is important, it is necessary, but if it doesn't happen, then somehow there is an ambiguity to it. And we are not able to find the reflexive action to follow that. I don't know how we're going to sort it out, but this has to happen. So, and I think there's one thing that we have to be united on, and I'm delighted to welcome Mrs. Vij to the program. I've had the great pleasure of spending time with her in Pune at the Peace University, and as an insightful professor. And she's going to talk about something very interesting, making of the music, tender, loving care. And I would imagine that there is no controversy, ambiguity in the value of tender, loving care, no matter what your medical, clinical, philosophical position might be. So,
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Rajivji.
Don't call me sir. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am so humbled and honored in the presence of all Padma awardees. Rajiv sir, I'm privileged and I'm tense also. So I'll start my talk here. I'll be reading out few things because I have this weakness of not remembering things. So in front of you, in front of such a wonderful dais, my topic is a mask, tender and loving care. My heartfelt gratitude for our mentor, Dr. Chandrakant Pandav sir. Many thanks to Heal Foundation for giving me a chance to put my experience on the making of mask. And to all the grand, respectable personalities on this virtual dais. Namaste, namaskar. I'm going to share and read out my unique experience after 20th of March 2020 when our university decided to close down. And that was, initiated lockdown just 5 months back. On a small but a big savior object called as the mask. Not as a professor of computer engineering or a faculty of peace studies or a representative from faculty of sustainability studies, MIT World Peace University, Pune, but as a human being, here my short story about making of masks starts. Pre-pandemic time, for me, a mask was an object normally worn on the face, typically for protection, disguise, performance, or entertainment. On a lighter note, I do remember Jim Carrey's mask first. Masks have been used since antiquity for both ceremonial as well as practical purposes, as well as in the performing arts and for entertainment. They are usually worn on the face, although they may also be positioned for effect elsewhere on the wearer's body. More generally, in ancient art history, especially sculptures, mask is the term for a face without a body, more than the face or added face. As we all know, apart from its traditional, cultural, theatrical, covering beauty and heritage significance, it has arrived in this modern age 2020 more as a medical and healthcare and healing significance. Now, talking about healing, I think about the small object of affection nowadays due to COVID-19, In late March 2020, all of a sudden, it became more than a human need or accessory than a significance. It became survival as we, a group of friends who did utilize our lockdown time and period in designing, making. Just a minute, I'll just check my internet connection. Am I audible?
Yeah,
Am I audible, sir?
It was coming slow. It was
Hello?
breaking in between, but you are audible. Please continue. Please
Okay.
continue.
Fine. I think about this small object of affection nowadays due to COVID-19 in late March 2020, all of a sudden it became more than a human need or accessory than a significance. It became survival, and we with a group of friends who did utilize our lockdown time in designing, making beautiful cotton masks, and more important is distributing it for free for people in the vicinity. And cost-effective solution to find it out, no profit, no loss basis supplies to various industries around Pune. After 5 months of global internal and eternal introspection, while actually being part in making, cutting, stitching, and distributing the masks, realized a mask is just a smile. A mask is just a smile, a tender loving care, as our mentor, Dr. Chandrakant Pandavji, he mentions always to me, a mask is just a smile. MIT World Peace University Peace Studies has been very grateful to have such a mentor. And when we handed over thousands of masks to many people in the vicinity of Pune, we could feel the smiles and gratitude right from a vegetable vendor, chowkidars, till managers and CEOs, friends and relatives, knowns and unknowns. We found no one who resists taking these colorful, beautiful cotton masks. One gesture of handing over a hand made cotton masks in this pandemic brings a smile on the faces. Sheer satisfaction and gratitude, I must say. Thanks to my friend Anuja Rahman, I must mention her name, for a new discovery about masks in my life in pandemic days. Now, when I think about it, reminds me of 4 key ingredients of this amazing object. A clean, soft cloth, that is first ingredient. Second one, a scissor to design and cut it with precision. Third, a string. Thoda sa prem ka dhaga, a string to stitch, and a heart full of love and affection. So, sirs and madams on this panel, Sant Kabir says, in short, I will just read out few lines for you. Very interesting lines about mask. No more shall I weave a garment of pain. Kabir says, no more shall I weave a garment of pain, for you have come to me, drawn by my weaving. I weave your name on the loom of my mind. I weave your name on the loom of my mind to make a beautiful garment when you come to me. For all the esteemed doctors, for all the esteemed professionals in public health here, one more line from Sant Kabir, Jeeni Jeeni Beeni Chadariya. And how did God, the master weaver, make this finely woven fabric, as we all call as skin, human skin, that we wear all our lives? Have you thought about it any time? Yes, there exists a corona, so there exists a mask too. So COVID has definitely taught us, which Rahim ji couldn't practically teach us from his dohas. So one Rahim ji ka doha aapke liye, and I'll end my talk here. Rahiman dhaga prem ka mat todo chatkaye, टूटे पे फिर ना जुरे, जुरे गांठ भरी जाए. रहीम कहते हैं कि प्रेम का नाता नाजुक होता है, इसे झटका देके तोड़ना उचित नहीं होता. यदि यह प्रेम का धागा एक बार टूट जाता है तो फिर इसे मिलाना भी कठिन होता है, और मिल भी जाए तो गांठें आ जाती है, बीच में गांठें पड़ जाती है. So I shall end my talk here. My sincere regards my sincere most regards and respect for Dr. Rajiv Sethi. I had an opportunity, my first opportunity to interact with Mr. Rajiv Sethi on our campus of MIT World Peace University 2 years back. It was a wonderful session, wonderful experience to meet him. Thank you so much, Rajiv Sethi. And my another mentor, Mr. Rajiv Mehrotra sir. Shukriya. Namaskar. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sheetalji. That was a very sort of, how do I put this, a very valuable contribution to the discourse this evening. It's reflective of who you are because I've met you in person, and you know the warmth and love that you radiate. I think that is needed most of all as we approach the coronavirus and the struggle to deal with it. And I think what people fear as much as the disease is that once you get the disease, what happens to you in an impersonal hospital? And I think Amitabh Bachchan has written about this of 2-3 weeks that he spent in hospital, and how the lack of human contact had caused him so much distress because everybody who came to him was in this PE outfit and he couldn't see anybody's eyes. He couldn't communicate with people, and he just felt that he was in touch with sort of superhuman people like robots. And I think to humanize this is really a wonderful idea. But it takes me to a question that we've had from a gentleman, Vignesh Reddy, when you talk about cloth masks. And this is really for Professor Reddy and anybody else who's sort of working in this field. And he says that few news sources and politicians are saying that cloth masks are as effective as commercial masks available in the market. How true are these statements? Dr. Reddy?
A double-layered thick cloth mask is as effective as the surgical mask. It's not as effective as the N95, but a good thick cloth mask, which is double-layered, is quite effective, and they should be used as much as possible.
Another question, sort of
when other masks are not available.
Sort of related, a question related to that, just a moment, Dr. Pandit, is there a 100% mask? I mean, a mask that is 100% safe?
There is virtually no 100% mask, but the hazmat suit, which people wear in intensive care units, covers the entire face, and therefore the risk of droplets or aerosols is very little. But otherwise, there is really no 100% mask which can be worn over the nose and the mouth. N95 filters out 95% of the particles, where this virus is effectively blocked. Because if the question is 100% effective against this virus, yes, in terms of filtering out. But if you are careless with your hands and then start touching your face, then you can still violate that barrier.
Thank you. Dr. Pandit wanted to come in. Yes, Dr. Pandit.
Three things from my side. First thing is about the mask. The acronym that I use is keep men away. Mouth, eyes, and nose. Keep men away. Because on an average, we touch our mouth, ear, and nose almost 80 to 90 times a day without knowing about it. So that's number one. So when you wear a mask, it acts as a physical barrier in a way. Number two, about the 100% protection you can have only if you wear a space suit and decide to go to the Mars. Number three, the science so far as far as I know, Mars gives you, if woven properly, gives 75% protection, 75%. And my colleague Swadeep will talk in his next session that I think 80% of the budget they're spending on health should be on health promotion. Mask, that should be our task. And fourth thing, I really didn't have much time to focus my attention on the news mask. I just made very general comments with abundant common sense and wisdom. I think I was unmasked in trying to understand the mask behind the corona epidemic.
Thank you, Dr. Pandit. It's such a pleasure and honor for me to be here with so many friends, and I hesitate to call Dr. Pant a friend. I mean, he's senior inspiration and has done amazing work. I actually first got to know him as someone who was doing a television program. And then I mean, I knew of him, but at a personal level, as a fellow communicator. So, Dr. Pant, it's over to you. You have the, I think, very interesting task of talking about the history of the mask.
No, Professor Vij has Rajiv done it very, very well comprehensively.
Okay, so
I will chip in where I come from because first of all, I think that this webinar, when the invitation came to me, was structured differently. So it was structured differently as history of mask, craft of mask, and so on. But I think we are doing a far more useful thing here. So I have a small problem when you said what is the truth, and are we being bombarded by a pandemic of information which we don't know how to cope with? Now, and you also did emphasize the need for arriving at some consensus after all this discussion we have among experts and laymen and mavericks and people who are a little unhinged there, like me. But I would like to say that you, with your great passion and concern about matters spiritual, I think it's a very difficult question to say what is truth and whether it means the same thing to everybody. So we all have a subjective, internal, built-in mechanism to decide that which filters, that whatever comes to us, what we think is credible, what is not. If Dr. Reddy and Dr. Pandav tell you something, it carries with it a stamp of credibility which a quack doesn't have. But then again, when Dr. Pandav, with his great wisdom, says that common sense will carry you more than halfway, more than three-fourths of the way, two-thirds of the majority. I'm not going to devalue the traditional knowledge systems or popular wisdom. And I think Dr. Reddy has been extremely reassuring that as long as you have a double-layered cloth, you are reasonably protected. But to go back to those philosophical concerns and mass, Rajiv, I think we know enough of the scriptures being quoted, but I would say that Jatasi Dhruvo Mrityu, the classic aphorism from Gita, everybody remembers. So ultimately, you know, whoever is born is going to die. And whether you take it here or you take it to the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, 100% certitude is not possible about life and death matters. So when an accident takes place, like the blast in Beirut, the horrendous tragedy, or whether somebody drunk runs over somebody with a SUV or a luxury car, whether somebody gets under a suburban train, whether somebody gets electrocuted in flooded Mumbai at the moment and dies before Corona hits him or her, I think are issues which people in this times of Corona, I think, you know, there is that Marquez novel which says love in time of cholera. Now, I think we have to think in terms of love, life, and loss of love and life in times of Corona. So if Dr. Pandav, I think, was absolutely fascinating when he says that we suddenly isolate one out of very many life-threatening risks and focus on it and devote all our energies on it. I think we should be very grateful to him for pointing out that there are other issues of life and death. There might be somebody at home with a malignancy, somebody with a heart disease, somebody with a kidney failure, who's not having access to the hospital. And talking of Mr. Bachchan, with all due respect to him, he is not a stranger to high-tech ICUs before that, ever since the Puli accident with Puli Desar took place. Puli Desar is not there, but Mr. Bachchan is still around. So if you end up in a high-tech hospital, which is private, whether it's a political leader who ends up in Medanta or Mr. Bachchan or somebody else who ends up in Nanavati or other, I think the problem is that it is not a question of losing human contact. Because a superstar or a celebrity in sports has lost that kind of a human contact in any case. You might be part of a crowd, an unnamed crowd willing to get you a ticket on a train to get back on a reverse migration, to quote the ugly word, back to your village so that you don't starve to death. You probably go home and die in peace wherever you go, rather before the coronavirus claims you. That again is a loss of humanity and human contact and touch. You might be staying with rank strangers, and there were those heart-rending stories of a Muslim youth escorting his Hindu friend to his village, and he dying midway through dehydration, not of corona. He had tested corona negative. So I think Dr. Pandav raised some of these very, very fundamental issues that in a country which has lack of access to hospital, primary, secondary, tertiary, whatever, and there are other issues where people lose life without getting into a hospital. So there's an abstract concept that I'm losing contact with humanity. I've seen people like robotic in the hospital, high tech, and it's very cruel. One feels very cruel saying this, but I think those who never made it to the hospital probably never experienced this alienation, Brechtian, or otherwise call it whatever you may. And I think I'm very grateful to Dr. Reddy, who again demystifies the mask to an extent where it doesn't really make a difference whether it's a death mask of the adolescent prince in the Great Pyramid, or whether it is a dead mask coming out of a Stone Age, 6,000 years BC, or it is a tribal African mask, or a mask of a no dancer, or it's a mask of a Kathakali dancer. Very nuanced, symbolic. The green mask of the piche, something else, or what does a mask do? And I remember as children, we used to play the games of thieves and cops, and you had the mask with the handkerchief tied. Ultimately, it's a green piece of cloth, double layered. This is who you are. So it is protecting. So it is protecting you. So I think you have an issue, but as long as you hear me, because what I feel on the screen is something else. Somebody is trying to get to the question. But the point is,
please continue, sir. Please.
If I could continue, just conclude in a minute.
Yeah, please continue.
What I'm trying to get across is that I think this seminar has been extremely useful. That it tells how you can have a political engagement with mass, but at the same time, what Professor Vic said, ultimately what matters more is compassion for other human beings. If you are giving a mask to somebody who can't.
Sorry, Mr. Pant.
Sorry.
Just
Mr.
interrupt
Singh,
you.
can you mute? Vimal, can you mute? Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, carry on, because we couldn't hear you. Someone else was speaking.
Yes, I know. This happened. Somebody went through my mask. Use the mask for A, disguising their face, B, for some kind of a protection. But I think what is important is what both the specialists said here in despotic medicine, that if you wash your hands enough number of times and if you put on a mask, it protected you very sufficiently. But did people staying in underprivileged shanty towns have enough drinking water? Did they have enough water to wash their hands and with soap half a dozen times in the day? So unless we had provision for water in colonies where these people were staying congested lives, can they afford soap with such abundant to wash their hands 6 times, 7 times a day? So I think these issues were focused by coronavirus, and even the scare, even if this pandemic was given over notice, exaggerated notice, it did serve the function for our gaze to turn inwards, how inegalitarian we were with our domestic assistants, how indifferent we were to social divisions in the class, and we never thought of masks like a ghungat or a burqa, which were traditionally part of the, or the scavenger, who's doing manual scavenging, which we seem to have abolished theoretically. When they go down to a gutter, all the protection they have is a handkerchief. So I think, Rajiv, I was extremely stimulated by this conversation. And I think when Professor Vich said about those things, I remembered some friends who were making decorated Madhubani printed masks, pastel shaded masks. So it also allowed me to go back to the history of masks. It becomes a part of a performance. And I'm very glad you mentioned Jain Munis. Professor Reddy, I think, mentioned Jain Munis. So if you have a tradition of covering your face and moving around in public, either as a Digambar or as a Shwetambar, is part of a performance, elaborate ritual performance, which signifies that each small microbial life matters. It should not enter your mouth and should not involuntarily commit hinsa. Now,
thank you, Dr. Pant. I think we're in television anchor style. We're out of time, and we only have a few minutes to go. And if I may just sort of sum this up, I mean, there are some questions, but I think they have been implicitly answered. And I can only most passionately feel and say that if we're looking at public health, we're looking at public health communication. It is crucial that we send out an unambiguous bottom line communication. If we are expecting or looking for or hoping for compliance, I do not believe that the community, and including people myself who are uninitiated, have the information to make an educated choice. And particularly if I see an official communication which is then countered by the sort of senior establishment of the state. I mean, we hold prime ministers and politicians in disproportionate high regard. And if we get that kind of signal, I think people like, including people like me, are confused. If we get data that is obviously contradictory, the High Court is intervening and pointing out to the Delhi government that your figures are low because you're doing 11,000 tests as opposed to 18,000 tests. If I get a news report today and that is campaigning for plasma, and then I get another report this morning in the Times of India that said, look, it's not affecting mortality. So unless we can have a uniform communication policy on the principles where the variables are limited, we cannot succeed as a public health initiative on this. I mean, you're a communicator, sir. I want to most humbly submit that. And on a philosophical note, that I think today we recognize, certainly in the tradition that I practice and with modern science, that there is no single reality. There is no single truth. And that quantum physics is telling you the truth, as you pointing out when you're talking about the migrants and others, is dependent on where the observer is located. However, at a functional level, we have to have the certitude of a acceptable, comprehensible, implementable relative truth. And without that, I don't think we will make the kind of impact that we need to make. And we mustn't forget that in the United States and implicitly in India, we're also seeing the politicization of the mask. And that the mask has become a very important political tool, a political statement, and also a statement, as I suggested to you in Ayodhya yesterday, of invincibility, of a faith, of a tradition. That if I'm an evolved Mahant, I can afford not to wear a mask. And so it's extremely complex, and I think that we will not succeed unless there is a uniform message, imperfect though it might be. So thank you very much. I'm sorry to have entered with a sermon. This has been a very valuable learning experience from me from each of the speakers. So my personal gratitude.
Thank you, Mr. Malhotra.
And
thank you, Mr.
I'm really
Malhotra, for
grateful.
hosting this. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Malhotra. Just one last question, since we have Professor Srinath Reddy, the iconic public health expert, as Dr. Pandav, and a person of international fame, and he's one of the pioneers of public health in India. Sir, answering to Mr. Malhotra's question, what do you think as a single point guideline for coronavirus prevention part of it, or I'm not talking about the medical management, but the prevention, and particularly with respect to public health communication. Do you think anything of that sort emerging out of India, or there's a need to create a consensus and then present to the public of India so that there is no conundrum and people follow the guidelines as the best for them?
Well, basically, I would only say that first thing is we must try our best to build up our innate immunity with good nutritious diet, which is quite rich in fruit and vegetables and nuts to the extent we can have them, even through seasonal diets, not necessarily very expensive, good sleep, and then follow and exercise, which is actually what builds up our innate immunity against most infections, especially against respiratory viruses. Then the additional precautions of avoiding crowds to the extent we can, but certainly wearing masks and practicing hand hygiene are going to be absolutely critical too. So these are the things that we need to follow. I don't think there is a controversy about that. The controversies arise only now about treatments, testing numbers, testing methods. Well, as science is evolving, some of these will self-correct. But some of the enduring realities of public health are that you need good sanitation, good hygiene, personal hygiene, but at the same time, in this particular case, try and prevent the virus from entering your body by blocking the gateways through which it comes, that is the mouth, the nose, and the eyes.
sir, do you think that stringent, like as Mr. Malhotra pointed out, that behavior change, public health communication is going to make a difference? We as Heal Foundation have also introduced a Mask is Must campaign and freedom from coronavirus till around Independence Day. But a lot of people are trying to do their own efforts in multiple ways. But do you think, sir, in this case of mask, stringent rules will help? Like there are certain rules of some challans being cut on Delhi street, or whom they find wearing not wearing mask in a car. But if you go into the crowded places in the markets and all, nothing such stringent is happening. Do you think such stringent rules, regulations will help with respect to penalties, fines, in, in the case of mask specifically?
Well, as Mr. Rajiv Mehrotra clearly said, the compliance or adherence must come from the very top so that the citizen on the street also recognizes the importance of it. But I think it's important for us to carry the message and persuade people, and merely shouting from the rooftops will not help. You require a lot of local mediators through women's groups, youth groups, self-help groups, and others. The local information networks will have to actually convince people these are important and monitor the adherence. So what we require is an effective communication strategy which goes through all the layers of communication, including the immediate influentials in the local community. So we need a lot more people engagement in this. So what we require is people partnered public health.
Dr. Panda, sir, please, sir. Sir, you have to unmute. Sir, please unmute.
Three things from my side in the reverse order. I'm gratitude to my esteemed panelists and colleagues who joined us at a very short notice. I took the liberty of my bank balance of goodwill with them. Thank you, Pushpesh, Rajiv, Srinath, Sheetal, and Shriyam's blessings, and Madam Poonam Khetarpal. She was on another webinar, so she couldn't be there. So most grateful to you. And this is an unmasked comment. This is an unmasked comment. Number one. Number two, if I were the Minister of Health of the world, world as a community, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, I would give 90% of resources for giving one message: mask and hand washing. Mask and hand washing. So I end with a slogan. The task for us is to ask for mask. The task for us, and zero tolerance for that. The task for us is ask for mask with zero tolerance. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. It was a privilege to be along with the India's top public health and communication experts of the country, the educationists of the country. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Sir, I request Dr. Pandav and Mr. Shankar to stay with us, and we'll do a small announcement of COVID Hero Awards. And this time we decided to award the individuals who are not organizations. They just got motivation from the sufferings of their society and came forward to actually individually or forming groups to voluntarily do something for the society for with respect to the COVID sufferings, COVID panic, COVID crisis, whatever you call it. And these we shortlisted about 8 such individuals from across the country. And I would request my colleague Ankit, Dr. Ankit, to please show it on the screen, whom we will announce of honoring. We had a esteemed a jury team headed by Professor Chandrakant Pandav. Nobody needs introduction about it. Mr. R. Shankar, the president of Heal Foundation. Mr. Dhananjay Kumar, one of the leading and the oldest health writer journalist. Dr. Professor Vinita Gupta, head of Professor of Mass Communication at Maharaj Agristian College. Mr. Sanjay Upadhyay, the pioneer of environmental legal firm, ELDF environmental legal firm, and editor of Paryavidhi magazine for environment. Professor K.G. Suresh, former Director General of Indian Institute of Mass Communication. He is the Dean of School of Modern Media, UPS University, and myself, Dr. Swadeep Srivastava, founder of Heal Foundation. And these are the 8 names we'd like to announce and give them certificates and validations to them. And Ankit, can you please just show them?
The first name is Dr. Beena Madhvat from UMI. She is the Deputy Director of Fully Family Hospital, Mumbai, and also work as a consultant gynecologist and National President of the Sister Doctors Forum of India, Health Secretary for Mumbai Ash Diocese. She played a pivotal role on behalf of her hospital to make tie-ups with the government in the battle against COVID-19. Due to her lead role, on an average daily, about 130 COVID-positive patients, with 26 of them on ventilator, have been getting treatment since March 2020 in Fully Family Hospital, Mumbai. We applaud her efforts. And we have Mr. Sheikh Adil Mustaq. He's 2015 batch Jammu and Kashmir Police Services officer from Baramulla district, who is posted as Deputy Superintendent of Police Traffic Police in Srinagar. He has started a chain on volunteer contribution across the Kashmir Valley by delivering the life-saving drugs and essential food items at the doorsteps of the needy people. He deployed volunteers from the traffic department by the help of DC. Srinagar also provided curfew passes to the volunteers. This was an initiative by like-minded group. He formed 4 WhatsApp groups ranging from catering to food to medicine to other COVID-19 related help. He also used social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp to get the requests from the people and mobilize them for the same. Then we have Ms. Ritu Jaiswal. She is the Mukhia and recipient of the Champions of Change Award from the Vice President of India, M. Venkaiah Naidu, last year. During COVID-19 pandemic, she has been helping the migrants from the panchayat wherever they are by providing them ration and other necessary things. She has also taken care of their families in the village through community mobilization. Over 600 migrants from the panchayats stranded in Tamil Nadu, Delhi, Surat, Mumbai, and other places have availed the assistance and are in regular touch through WhatsApp, Twitter, and Facebook. Ms. Reshma Mohandas, she is a healthcare worker nurse. She headed home for the mandatory 2-week quarantine, but with the resolve to serve the patient, she came back. Coming back to action after quarantine, she took care of the couple Thomas and Mariama, who were infected. She believed that she contacted the COVID-19 disease as she was in close contact with the couple, who did not wear masks initially, and it made them uncomfortable. But she kept talking and eventually made them convinced to wear a mask. Abhilasha Kumari Sharma. She is currently serving as the Sitamarhi District Magistrate. The challenge was to ensure the smooth movement of the workers, their record keeping and tracking health checkups, vehicle management, quarantine center, treatment of COVID positive cases, and providing return. Skill mapping of all workers was done to map them with work demand. Integrated databases helped her to provide benefits given by the government, including monetary ration, regular health checkups, job tagging. Saurabh Jain, he believes in one simple thing in life: live and let live. The mantra has now encouraged him to take up the responsibility of feeding hundreds of unprivileged people in Delhi on daily basis amid the ongoing coronavirus lockdown. Since the announcement of 21-day lockdown, there is a large number of people who have been left without food and shelter. Jan is determined to provide help to as many as he can. Jan, who runs a garment factory in East Azadnagar, has hired people to prepare food for over 500 people daily. He even hired a few delivery men to ensure that the food packets reach those who are unable to come to his factory. Last but not the least, Anahit Bindra. She has launched an initiative in the neighborhood known as Sue the Divide. It is focused on enabling women to earn livelihood by stitching clothes, masks, and other accessories. She gathered 12 women from the Khyala slum in Delhi and trained them in sewing as well as designing and fabric management with the help of her aunt. That's all from my end.
These are just few of the selected COVID fighters who are doing fabulous work with respect to their own personal contribution, not as an organized organization or a corporate or with a CSR fund, but managing most of the things on their own individually and trying to contribute and give back to the society where they live, the community where they live. And we thought of starting this series of COVID Hero Awards, shortlisting and honoring and recognizing such heroes and across the country, which obviously, if nothing else, will give them motivation and support to do such things on a continuous basis for society. With this, we end this with we show a short video of our 120 days of COVID Fighters Safety Movement, which is probably one of the largest health awareness and behavior change program we are running as HEAL Foundation in association with ICCID under patronage of Dr. Professor C.S. Pandav and support of Mr. R. Shankar, Mr. Dhananjay Kumar, and all other panelists and speakers. We have about 200 of them in last 120 days from all cross-section. Today we had Mrs. Vij from World Peace University, the educationist. Similarly, we had all the doctors, experts, we had top public health experts, we had medical expert, COVID management expert, communication experts. So we have been involving and integrating all aspects of health awareness around COVID and overall healthcare in India, as this is our core responsibility as a health communicators. So, and spreading the right information from home. Ankit, if you can play the video at the end and end this program. Thank you, everyone, again. Thank you. Myself, Dr. Pradeep Srivastav. I am a public health expert. I represent the HEAL Foundation, a healthcare advocacy group in India. And today's objective is I wanted to introduce to you a very unique program called Heal Dai Samvad. You can even call it Healthy Samvad or Heal Dai Samvad, which is being introduced by us, brought to on our platform by HEAL Foundation in association with an international public health program, ICCIDD.
Yes, sir. Swamiji. Hi.
Okay. Can I close it?
in this sector is something which I am trying to come out with and give back through a lot of knowledge-based seminars, webinars, discussions, and creating a lot of forums where people can learn, people can actually adapt related to healthcare issues, the current issues and overall healthcare issues, and benefit out of it. So in this lieu, we created a series of programs under the banner of Heal Foundation COVID Fighters. And that series of programs started with a few webinars on the COVID home management, the COVID comorbidity and medical issues related to COVID-19 coronavirus. Nobody needs an introduction of coronavirus and COVID-19, what it is, because I think that's at the top of the mind and top of Google and top of Facebook and everywhere at the top currently.
संवाद के लिए मैं आप लोगों को धन्यवाद देता हूँ हिल फाउंडेशन की टीम में. The speakers that you brought are वो तारे आसमान से जमीन पे ले आए आप सारे सितारे थे. Excellent panel of speakers, excellent, best you can think of. My concluding message would be number one, that the entire world is your family, as our ancient scriptures have said. Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Why? Because this virus does not discriminate between any color, caste, creed, country, age, or gender. हम सब एक लोग हैं, एक कुटुंब है हमारा. So we have to face this pandemic with a human face, expressing sympathy, empathy, and compassion.
संकट काल में पेंडेमिक के इस काल में कि जब पूरी धरती पर भय, असुरक्षा और एक प्रकार का अवसाद है, ऐसे काल में आपने एक संवाद का अवसर दिया है. हमारे शास्त्र कहते हैं कि वादे वादे जायते तत्व बोध. जब कभी व्यथा हो, अवसाद हो, चिंता हो, अल्पता और विशेषकर कोई रोग हो या मानसिक क्लेश हो या किसी भी प्रकार के मनुष्य के सामने चुनौती हो, तब वो संवाद करें.
So they work for about 14 days over there. Then they are rotated. Then another team comes for 14 days. The first team goes into quarantine for 14 days so that they recover and they are pretty okay. They take the sampling, everybody's okay. And then they come back after 14 days. So the rotation continues in every district, in every isolation hospital, in every quarantine facility. So there's no direct load continuously on everybody. And once, if they do, I mean, there are cases they've got infected, like in King George Medical University. There was a doctor who got infected. There was a nurse who got infected there. Now, the place where she stays in Lucknow, that entire area of 2 kilometers had to be contained and sanitized and sampled and everything.
Sometimes it can be a relief also that you don't have to get up and wear your best clothes and be out and about. That can also be relaxing for the first couple of days where you can just be. But after some time, I do feel when such an extended lockdown happens, in order for you to feel a little boost of your own self-esteem, for you to do something in the day, there's nothing wrong in wearing clothes that you would go out in, putting on a little makeup, doing your hair.
Heal Foundation has been doing considerable work. It's about 10 years old now. And we have been organizing a lot of health writers workshops, and main focus is on
training health writers to report accurately on health issues and current health issues and not be carried away by sensationalizing things as many of the media do, especially after the onset.
Thank you, everyone. Any unanswered questions? We will definitely separately answer all the queries which we got through this Zoom webinar as well as from Facebook. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shankar sir. Thank you, Ankit. Thank you, Chavi. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.